Excellent. I declare open this hearing of the Senate Committee Affairs Legislation Committee Inquiry into the Aged Care Accommodation Payment Security Levy Amendment Bill 2025 and the Aged Care and Other Legislation Amendment Bill 2025. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. The committee will be conducting today's hearing via video conference and in person. My name is Senator Dorinda Cox and I am the chair of the committee, and I have with me in person Senator Blythe and Senator Ruston, and joining us via video conference is Senator Ananja Raja and Senator Dalija. These are public proceedings and being video streamed live via the Parliament's website, and a Hansard transcript is being made available. I remind all witnesses that in giving evidence to the committee that they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten and disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence. Witnesses also have a right to request to be heard in camera. If a witness objects to answering a question, they should state the grounds upon which the objection is made, and the committee will determine whether it insists on an answer having regard to the grounds on which it is claimed. If the committee determines to insist on an answer, a witness may request that the answer be given in camera. I remind all senators of their obligations under the Behaviour Code of the Australian Parliamentarians to treat witnesses with dignity, courtesy, fairness and respect. I remind committee members and witnesses who are appearing via video conference and who are not speaking to mute their microphones. I now welcome via video conference representatives from the Older Persons Advocacy Network, COTA Australia and National Seniors Australia. So welcome. And I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today? Can I go to the Older Persons Advocacy Network first?
Thank you. Craig Gear, the CEO of the Older Persons Advocacy Network.
COTA Australia?
Patricia Sparrow, Chief Executive Officer of COTA Australia.
Thank you. And National Seniors Australia?
Good morning, Chris Grice, CEO.
Jacinda Victor-John, Principal Aged Care Advisor.
Excellent, thank you. I'll now invite each organisation to make a short opening statement, and at the conclusion of any remarks, I will invite members of the committee to ask questions. So, the Older Persons Advocacy Network, did you want to go first?
Thank you, Senators, for the opportunity to appear. OPAN is a network of 9 organisations that are all about the rights and support for older people seeking and receiving aged care. We're reflecting that we're almost 9 years on from the establishment of the Royal Commission into aged care quality and safety, and older people still don't have the high quality care that the Royal Commission called for. OPAN welcomes the COTA bill, which we'll primarily speak on today, as the next step in implementing the Aged Care Act 2024, which will bring significant changes and deliver on the rights of older people. It is time for the new Aged Care Act to commence, and it must go ahead on the 1st of November 2025, because older people have waited too long for their rights to be upheld and for timely access to high quality services when and where they need them and under their direction. And that's why OPAN supports the passage of the COTA bill, but with 5 amendments. Number 1, under 11A, the delivery of funded services, there is a requirement for 48 hours notice on business days for any changes in services or cancellation by the participants, and this hasn't been consulted on. And while this might align with NDIS requirements, the same notification or change period is not allocated to older people. OPAN believes that in emergency situations or exceptional circumstances, the fee should be able to be waived or not changed. This includes co-contributions, and OPAN would argue that this should be specified in the Act rather than leaving it up to individual providers to make a decision, resulting in inequitable application of some providers charging a fee and others not. So our prime recommendation is to add the words "except in emergency situations" to this clause. Number 2, under section 27, in relation to actions of supporters, OPAN is supportive of the changes to section 27.1 to remove consent from each action and ensure it is in line with the will and preferences. OPAN would prefer, though, to have the wording changed so that it states that it's with the individual's agreement, or at least in line with the person's known wishes and will and preferences. However, there does remain concern about the use of in line with and how it will be interpreted and applied. Therefore, we recommend to amend the proposed change so that it says a supporter of an individual may, with the agreement of the individual. Alternatively, at a minimum, add in line with the person's known will and preferences. Number 3, OPAN welcomes the addition of section 28.2D and believes that with this new clause, 28.2A should be removed. The current 28.2A can be taken to be interpreted that NDIS representatives, medical treatment decision makers and others are covered by this subsection. It is much clearer for the older people and the potential supporters that the rules prescribe the class of persons included within this section. 4, we think that other redress and compensation schemes should be exempt from the income and asset assessment where these are recognised state and territory schemes, or they've been implemented where institutional harm, trauma and abuse has been accepted to have been claused. 5, and finally, OPAN believes that a COLA should have included in primary legislation an explicit note or clause that prior consent of an older person by the provider to the provider is not required for an independent aged care advocate to provide support to the older person. The draft rules now require the consent to be obtained from an independent aged care advocate to provide information, education or individual support. The older people are not able in a position to be able to give consent or know about advocacy, then how can they be expected to provide consent? This should be remedied in the primary legislation or at least removed from the rules. Thank you, Senators, for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr Gear. Can I go to COTA Australia?
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to appear. COTA Australia represents older people over the age of 50 across the range of areas that impact them across government, and of course that includes aged care. We also welcome the COLA bill. We do want to see the bill pass, and that is really so that the Aged Care Act can commence on the 1st of November. And it's really important that happens because it will ensure that older people have the information they need on fees and charges before signing their supported home contract, which was one of the primary reasons we supported a delay to the start date so that people were able to give informed consent. The new Act has many positives that need to commence on the 1st of November, including operating under a statement of rights, enhanced quality standards, an independent complaints commissioner, supported decision making, 8 levels of home care packages, and more support in palliative and restorative care. These are all things that older people have been waiting far too long for, and so we really want this bill to pass so that the Act can commence on the 1st of November. There are, of course, a range of things in the bill that are going to need to be monitored through implementation, particularly relating to fees and charges, to make sure that services remain accessible and affordable, and that if financial support is needed, it can be easily gained. Having said that, we still want the bill to pass, and we are proposing a small number of amendments to support and enhance participants' rights and protections. Along with OPAN, we support changes to Amendment 23, which is the 48 hours cancellation period. We don't think it should be 48 hours. We think it should be 24. We understand that this was done to bring it in line with the NDIS, but for similar reasons, including emergency and extenuating circumstances, people living on their own and not being able to necessarily inform a provider, we think it's important that it's 24 hours. We would also note that other services like GPs have windows of 2 to 24 hours. And the key thing here is that costs won't be incurred if a 24-hour or 1 day period for notice is required. So we would support changing that to 1 day, not 2 days. I won't go into 28.2 A, which OPAN's already explained really well around guardians, but we also support that being removed to make it really clear and ensure that older people's wishes and preferences are maintained. We have a couple of other amendments. One is around Amendment 53. This is around allocation of places. What this does is actually push back the start date for work to commence to ensure that no one is waiting for more than 3 months for a package. It pushes it out by 4 months. While we think that people shouldn't wait for longer than 30 days, we do support the government moving to make sure that no one's waiting for longer than 3 months. But we think that work should be ongoing, not waiting till 1 November to start, because we've got 80,000 or more people waiting for anything up to and over a year for a package. So we want to see that work progressing and not waiting and being pushed out by 4 months. We also want to see some changes to Amendment 80, which removes the legislative requirement for there to be a written higher everyday living fee agreement, takes it from legislation to the rules. Just on higher everyday living fees, we understand this has been done because there are 2 types of higher everyday living fees people can be asked to pay, and this was done to try and make this more distinguishable. We suggest that should be done in the legislation. The 2 types of higher everyday living fees are where you might take a package or have an ongoing delivery of a range of services to you. That we think should be covered in the legislation by a written agreement. And then there is ad hoc higher everyday living fees for something like if you want to go into the cafe to buy a cup of coffee, or you want to go to get the hair done once maybe a month or something like that, but not on a regular basis. So we think the legislation should continue to include the requirement for a written agreement for ongoing services, and there should be a distinction made in the legislation to explain about the ad hoc higher everyday living services, and that can be dealt with in the rules. Finally, we would raise that Amendment 212 removes a 14-day timeframe for government determination of individual contribution rates. We think that should remain a legislative requirement rather than being relegated to the rules to give it the appropriate level of parliamentary oversight and delivery of reasonable community expectations on how long it takes for people to get that information. And I do support the other things that OPAN has raised today as well. You will receive our submission later today within the timeframe, but we weren't able to get it to you this morning before the hearing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Can we move to the National Seniors Australia?
Thank you, Chair and Senators. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today. National Seniors Australia has been engaged in aged care reform over many years, leading for the call for the Aged Care Royal Commission to Aged Care Quality and Safety, both providing submissions and appearing before the Royal Commission. As such, we welcome the opportunity to appear before the committee to discuss the Aged Care and Other Legislation Amendment Bill 2025. Pleased to see the introduction of the bill following the outline in our initial submission, and view it as a significant step in implementing the much-needed aged care reforms. We broadly support the bill's objective to ensure continuity of government-funded care during the transition to this new rights-based aged care system, strengthen provider accountability and governance, and clarify rule-making powers to address unforeseen operational issues. However, our support is contingent on safeguards being implemented to ensure that legislative flexibility does not undermine parliamentary scrutiny or the rights of older people. Our focus of input is in relation to the transitional rulemaking powers. We acknowledge the rationale for Schedule 2 amendment of the Aged Care Act 2024, which provides the Minister with time-limited powers to modify the operation of Aged Care Act 2025 for 2 years post-commencement. Given the scale and complexity of these reforms, it is reasonable to allow for such flexibility to avoid disruptions to care. In our view, the power is appropriately confined in duration and purpose. That said, we are mindful of concerns about any expansion of executive power. The use of these transitional powers must be subject to appropriate oversight, transparency, and public reporting. Given that the significant discretion granted to the Minister under the transitional powers oversight is essential. We strongly advocate for the Inspector General of Aged Care to be empowered to monitor and publicly report on the use of these powers and their impact on older Australians. This role is especially vital in the first 24 months following the commencement of the new system on 1 November. Without clear oversight, there is a risk that urgent rule changes made in good faith may have unintended consequences for care recipients. In relation to workforce capacity and service continuity, The successful transition to the new aged care system will depend heavily on the stability and capacity of the aged care workforce. Legislation must be complemented by clear strategies that support providers in attracting and retaining qualified staff, that minimise disruption to care during the transition period, and provide training and upskilling opportunities aligned with the new system. Without a skilled and supported workforce, the benefits of legislative reform will be difficult to realise in practice. In closing, we support the intent of the bill and urge the strengthening of mechanisms to ensure that ministerial discretion is counterbalanced by transparency, independent oversight and stakeholder input. We also emphasise that the true impact of the new Aged Care Act will only be understood in practice. As such, it is critical to establish robust monitoring systems that identify emerging issues early, protect the rights of older people and guide continuous improvement. We look forward to supporting the committee in its deliberations and providing a written submission highlighting our recommendations in further detail later today.
Thank you very much, Mr Grice. I will now move to questions from committee members. So I'll go to the opposition, and Senator Ruston, you have the call.
Thank you very much. So just bearing in mind that we've got very, very little time, unfortunately, to prosecute this, I would like a lot longer to talk to you all. Can I just ask each one of the three of you whether you believe that there is sufficient information available to the people that you represent in a user-friendly format for them to understand what the impact of changes are going to be on the 1st of November, acknowledging the delay of 4 months, and particularly in relation to those people who have come onto the system since the 12th of September and will have their situation and circumstances change on the 1st of November. So do you believe there is sufficient information and people are well enough informed for them to be able to have an easy transition from where we are now to what happens on the 1st of November? So I can maybe start with you, Craig.
So I think Mr.
Gear.
Apologies, I think I just froze. Senator, apologies, my internet just froze. Yes, Senator, I think there needs to be ongoing work to inform people. We were concerned about the lack of information in relation to co-contribution.
So we've got an issue with the connection.
Oh, lost you again.
Thank you. I think if you might leave your camera off, it might prevent it from freezing if the network's not stable. Do you want to try again? We might have lost him. I think we've actually lost Mr. Gear, so we might move to Ms. Sparrow if we can.
And look, where Craig started, I'll continue. There is some information available. We think there's ongoing work needed, and we are working with people to do that. So to your question, Senator, there is information available, but more work needs to be done to make sure that people have the information they need. And as I said in my opening statement, it's important that this bill passes, particularly so that people will know what their fees and charges will be and can give informed consent.
Do you believe that there's adequate time, given that this bill doesn't get introduced until the end of August, beginning of September? There's then a period which the royal assent will require for Executive Council. We've then got to have the rules that get written on the back of this bill, and this all has to come into place on the 1st of November. Do you believe that there will be sufficient time for your... I
understand.
Yeah. Do you believe there'll be sufficient time for people to be able to get that information, and obviously the new arrangements in terms of their new contractual arrangements with providers?
And the way it's been explained to me, what this bill will do will enable that issue to be addressed in terms of people having information. I agree that the timelines are still tight, but I think that from the way it's been explained to me, then yes, I would expect that they will have information about their fees and charges ahead of time to enable them to give informed consent. We would be concerned if that wasn't the case. But I do think there's ongoing work needed to make sure that information is required, and that's really what I would say about that. We need to keep working to make sure there is as much information as possible, as quickly as possible for people.
Mr. Grice?
Senator, we're somewhat torn because we need to get it in place. It is critical. However, with the best endeavours of the department, and also we're even seeing Services Australia providing material through their FIS offices, but because of the late, the rules just basically being, made available the industry is working its way through it. So we are concerned that there isn't enough being done. It's going to require a massive effort to basically get this communicated effectively, that everybody understands what the new system is going to be all about.
Mr. Gear, you seem to be back again. Did you want to add anything to what has been put on that you heard?
Thank you. Just backing the Patricia's comments there around, we believe the information with a COLA going through will be able to be provided ahead of time on co-contributions. We think that is one of the most important parts of this, that people are understanding what they are signing up for and any agreements that they are signing. But we still think that needs to go ahead, and further communication work needs to be done by both the Department Services Australia and aged care providers. Thank you.
Okay. So you, both OPAN and COTA, listed a number of amendments that you would like to have considered, and obviously I've got your submission, Mr. Gear, and look forward to getting yours, Ms. Sparrow, later today. But I'm interested to understand, are they in their entirety your only concerns in relation to the Aged Care Act and this subordinate or legislation that seeks to amend a massive amount of that Act? I mean, I draw to your attention there are 325 changes to the original Act in this, and there are 197 repeals in this. I mean, this is actually a massive piece of legislation we've got before us. Are you satisfied that this piece of legislation, as it seeks to amend the original piece of legislation, that the only concerns you have are the ones that you've just outlined in your submission, Mr. Gear, and in your comments, Ms. Barrow?
I mean, there are a number of things that we will keep monitoring to make sure the impact on older people, particularly what is raised with us constantly, is the impact of the co-contributions and fees and charges. Issues such as the clinical, non-clinical consideration of showers. They are opportunities for us to continue to monitor the impact on older people, and we will be continuing to advocate for ongoing changes as we see these potential unintended consequences. We also want to see improved hardship provisions and the operations of those. We believe that we're focused on the primary issues that need to be adjusted with our amendments so that the Act goes forward, and on the balance, we believe the Act absolutely has to start on the 1st of November. Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to say, I wasn't suggesting that the Act didn't start. I'm just really keen to understand. We will have this particular bill in the Senate with the opportunity to amend it, to try and deal with the issues that I'm sure all of you have had raised with you by the people you represent since the bill first passed in November. I'm just really keen to understand, probably from OPAN and COTA, if you want anything else considered in terms of amendments apart from what you have outlined today, bearing in mind that Mr Grice raised a very, very real issue, and that is the extraordinary powers that are afforded to the Minister through the Henry VIII clause that's in this bill. Neither of you have raised any concern whatsoever that the Minister has those extraordinary powers. So I'm just keen to understand, is this all you want? Is there anything else you would like to raise?
Senator Ruston, can we give the, sorry to interrupt, I'm just keen for witnesses to have the opportunity to answer the question, and so I know that we've got 3 witnesses, and so I'm just keen to give them the space to be able to do that if we can make sure we move through that. So I think, Mr Gear, were you finished in responding to that question from Senator Ruston?
Thanks. We do support the that there is oversight through legislative and as proposed by Mr Grice of the Inspector General of any rules that were made under that Henry VIII provision, just to add to that. Thank you. I'll hand it back. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I go to Ms Sparrow?
We would also support what Mr Grice has proposed today and the other amendments that OPAN have raised. As I said, you'll get our submission later today. We've tried to focus on the issues that we feel need to be addressed in the bill, and we've tried not to pick up things that we might pick up in discussions on the rules and other things. So we've tried to be quite focused in what we've done. And as Mr. Gear said, there will be obviously ongoing implementation issues to monitor and make adjustments as needed.
Thank you. Mr. Grice?
Yeah, I guess in some respects, because of the complexity of the amendments, that's where, I guess in some respects, where the powers granted or proposed powers granted to the minister are somewhat of a catch-all, because there is such depth in some of these amendments, and to be truthful, some of these may be there may be some unintended consequences, and so this is where we think that this oversight piece is incredibly important, because it's just very challenging for OPAN, COTA, and national seniors to be basically the policeman for the entire aged care reforms, and somewhat challenging. And so we're doing our best to sort of stay ahead of this as the information is presented to us from the department, and please appreciate that we're doing our best to try and navigate our way through this, which is somewhat complex.
Thank you. You're still going? Yes?
Yeah,
yes.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So to you, Mr. Grice, you raise obviously a very significant issue in terms of oversight. So can I just unpack what you're saying, that you believe that if the Inspector General is given a role here, that you are satisfied that these extraordinary powers, I mean, 24 months of Henry VIII powers are pretty extreme in just about any circumstance. We don't see this happen very often. I'm keen to understand what is it that you would like to see. Do you want to see any amendment put forward in relation to the requirement for the Inspector General? I mean, how would you see this? How would you like to see this implemented so that that oversight provision you're talking about is actually enforceable?
Yeah, I guess because of the Inspector General reports to the Parliament with sort of some sort of mechanism where the minister is, at least there is some form of consultation and I guess involvement of the Inspector General and the department, the Inspector General's department, to actually be involved in that process. So there is some scrutiny in terms of what it is that the amendments be made. As to the mechanics of how that might work, that may require some further consideration, Senator.
Yeah. Has the government indicated to you, or the department indicated to you, how they are intending to convey any ministerial directions in relation to changes to the Act, and what the parameters around what they believe is acceptable to be changed by that ministerial power, as opposed to using a formalised mechanism, which is pretty standard, and that's using the rules through legislative disallowable instrument, or when they're serious enough, obviously, you would need to amend an Act. I mean, have they given any of you any indication about what are the parameters around what would be considered appropriate for a ministerial determination, as opposed to using those other two formalised mechanisms?
Senator, no, not at this point. However, our read of it is that the intent of this is to provide that catch-all so that there is no unintended consequences where folk who are already finding it challenging in terms of navigating the aged care system are not, there's unintended consequences occurring. So that's our read of it. We, in good faith, we've taken that's the intent of the inclusion. And so that's been our position, but why we still think there should be something in place just to ensure that there is that scrutiny and appropriate oversight.
Yep. Okay. Because I mean, I would...
Senator, I'd add to that we see that this should not increase costs for older people. There would be one issue where we would be extremely concerned if this was used to increase, say, the RAD retention level, and we believe that both committee oversight and disallowable of those individual rules is an absolute requirement for any use of these powers, but we haven't been given additional information about how they might work in operation.
So certainly,
Senator, I would just
please
concur with my colleagues around that. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll certainly make sure that the department is asked questions around this afternoon, and hopefully following that you might be able to provide us some more information about how you might see that work on behalf of your members. Can I just ask you, Mr Gear, in your submission you raised an issue in relation to the Territory Stolen Generation Redress Scheme payments not being excluded from determination. Can I just firstly ask you, are you aware, is that specifically the only sort of redress or compensation payment that is not excluded, to your understanding?
My understanding is, and I will defer to Patricia here as well, that it is the stolen generation territory schemes that aren't that are still considered as part of assets. And that potentially for care leavers as well, that some of their redress payments may be considered as assets, potentially not as income. And if someone's been given caused harm and redress has been made, that there should be an exemption. The amendment here seems to be require about compensation paid under the Aged Care Act. We think there should be a broader application for those redress schemes where the state has recognised abuse or trauma that has been caused to and paid compensation for that. Patricia, if you'd like to add to that.
Can I just say, I wasn't questioning about the argument behind their exclusion. I was just interested to understand if you've got any oversight as to why the Territory Stolen Generation redress payments are the ones that are included. I mean, are you aware in other assessments where asset assessments and means testing where this payment is exempt? So in terms of, assessment for age pension as an example or the like, are they excluded for the purposes of other payments? Is this an anomaly?
That may be a technical question for the department, Senator Ruston.
I'm just thinking, you obviously deal with older Australians, and has this issue been raised in relation to the means testing in other areas of the people that you represent, or is it an anomaly on this particular means testing arrangement? I mean, I can ask the department this afternoon, but you raise it as a specific as opposed to a general issue, and I know most payments do actually exclude redress payments and compensation payments. I'm just interested to understand about this one. Not aware.
I'm happy if any of the witnesses online needed to take that question on notice.
Yeah, we might take that one on notice.
What I can confirm is that it's only the national scheme that's excluded, so no state schemes excluded from the asset. But it is a technical question, and some of those we'll have to take on notice.
So I suppose the question is, would you be suggesting that all, particularly redress payments, should be excluded, whether they're state-based or federally based?
Can I I think the response was that they were going to take it on notice, so I'd hate to put them on the spot to now give an answer to that. I think given the technicality of that question, it might be in the best interest to allow them to continue to take that on notice.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to get a sense of how much more time you need, just so I can.
Time, but if you want to go to others,
if there were other senators that, I'm just going to check in with Senator Anandaraja and Senator Dalija online whether they had a question or line of questioning that they wanted to jump in. Michelle, I think you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you to the panel members for appearing and for all your advocacy in bringing forward this generational reform to aged care. In my previous life, I worked in a public hospital, and every day I cared for frail elderly, many of whom have fallen through a failing aged care system, who really did not get sufficient care at home. And I really wanted to just probe you a little bit about the fact that at the heart of this reform, as I understand, is this statement of rights, the rights of the patient, patient-centred care. And a key aspect of that is autonomy and choice. And Patricia, you talked about it a little bit and touched upon it with respect to end-of-life care. Now, I cared for far too many Australians, older Australians in hospital at their end of life, and it is not the ideal place to die. These are busy, chaotic places. People are moved around like chess pieces. There are alarms going off day and night. Can you talk to us a little bit about what these reforms mean, either using that example or other examples around autonomy and choice for older Australians, particularly with respect to home support packages?
I'm happy to make some comments. I'm sure that Craig and Chris might want to chime in as well, but certainly you're right, and the majority of older people want to die at home, and yet the majority of them die in hospital, as you're saying. What the new Support at Home program does is give people higher levels. So we've currently got 4 levels of packages. There will be 8, which will give people more support, but it also introduces a specific palliative care support piece for the last 3 months of life, which can be extended by 3 months, which will give people more support and hopefully actually assist people to die at home as is their wish. And we think that's a really important feature of the new Support at Home program.
And just to follow up, yes, sorry, go on, Mr. Gear, please.
The framework around the restorative pathway as well, so increased allied health support, which means that people are able to really, we say, get back onto their feet after a fall and that sort of thing, or leave hospital earlier because those allied health supports will be able to be provided. The other aspect of this bill, of the Aged Care Act 24, is around supported decision making and making that as a principle across the whole system, but for supporters as well. And we think that's a very important thing for self-determination of older people continue to make their own decisions. Thank you.
And I would just say the basis, having a rights-based system is really important. Older people talk to us all the time about wanting their wishes and their views to be respected. They often feel that that's not the case now, and it will take time for this big culture change to happen. But but the Act will bring that forward. Having a statement of rights enables us to really kind of push and make sure that that's in place in every aged care service across the country.
Thank you for your advocacy. I just want to pick up on what Mr. Gear said with restorative care. I can't agree with you more. We used to have patients staying in hospital for far too long after, say, falls or pneumonia or other types of infections and so on. And they would develop what we would call PJ paralysis. They were in their pajamas, stuck in hospital and just actually deconditioning. So having this kind of allied health support at home means that they can actually rehab at home and get back on their feet again rather than going backwards due to their infirmity. So can you just, my final follow-up question is really just, can you just tell us a little bit from the perspective of your members what delays and hold-ups to this bill, this tranche of reforms, will mean to people on the ground?
I think we talk all the time to older people who have been waiting since the Royal Commission. They feel that their rights aren't respected and they feel that they've been waiting for a really long time. They also really want the independent complaints. Complaints, you hope to avoid getting to a complaint situation, but they do feel that when the new complaints come in that they'll have some independence and someone who's there to look at it from their perspective, not just a tick box exercise about whether providers have done X, Y, Z to address the complaints. So people talk about that being really, really important. Having higher levels of care at home. Obviously, there is another inquiry that's looking at the amount of time that people are waiting for packages, and it's really critical that we push on that. But having higher levels of package, more packages, and as we're talking about that palliative care and that restorative care pathway is incredibly important. And people want that support because, as you're highlighting, they don't want to be in hospital, they don't want to get stuck in hospital, they want to be home. And while residential care is incredibly important, they also don't want to enter residential care before they have to. So these things are really important and the things that older people are talking to us about all the time. But the two most common words that people will say to me is to be listened to and to be respected, and the statement of rights they see as a way of that being achieved.
I have no further questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ananda Raja. We are heading towards the end of this panel. I'm just checking. 5 minutes?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, would that be, if you've got a quick one, Senator Ruston?
Well, it's not a quick one, but you know, I understand the timing of the day, and I want to ask other. So, just following on from the questions in relation to packages, Ms. Barrow, you made the comment around the that your desire was for it to be no more than 30 days. And that the government's put in 3. Their aspiration is 3 months, but you were concerned about the fact that these packages or the reduction of this timeframe had been kicked out to the 1st of November. My first question is, and to you first because you raised it, but I'm happy to hear from others. Do you think that it is acceptable that we actually have a timeframe for older Australians to get access to care that is even 3 months is an acceptable time, and are you supporting the government in saying 3 months is an acceptable time? And secondly, what would you like to see happen in the time between now and the 1st of November? Because quite clearly the 83,000 packages that were promised on the 1st of July have been delayed. So I'm interested in what is your actual position in relation to the time for getting a package and the impact on older Australians of this 4-month delay in the delivery of the promised packages?
Our position for some time has been that people shouldn't wait for more than 30 days from the time they're assessed to the time they receive a package. If people are actually at the point where they've come to get assistance, they really need assistance as quickly as possible. So our position for some time has been 30 days. The 3 months government aspiration is an improvement on what we've got currently. So we are, of course, supporting that they are moving to shorten that time period. But as advocates, we will keep pressure on to try and make sure that over time it comes down to 30 days. We supported the delay of the Act, but did want packages to continue to be rolled out during that time, which hasn't happened. And we'll be, putting a submission into the other inquiry that's looking at that. We don't think it's good that there are so many people waiting for packages. They're waiting for a long time. What we know happens is for people who are living at home, that may trigger them going into hospital or to residential care. Even if they've got a carer, maybe another older person with them who can no longer cope, and that will also trigger hospitalisations, home care. And we do know there are some cases where people don't get packaged before they come to the end of their life. So for all of those reasons, it's absolutely critical. So as I said, we support government reducing it to 3 months because that's better than what we have currently, but we will continue to push that it should be no more than 30 days. And we think packages should be rolled out and that work should be ongoing with that now.
I guess in terms
Senator,
of...
we would agree as well with COTA's position on the 30 days, also to add around the single assessment service, that the delays in assessment add to that waiting time, and we need to look at it as an end-to-end approach from registration for assessment through to service commencement, not just from approval, because those extended delays for assessment and then under the new system, what is likely to be delays for reassessment, will continue to add to the pain of older people not getting the services they need.
Sorry, can I just jump in, just in terms of those waiting times? In reality, to get down to 30 days, given where we're sitting with it's over 80,000 people that have been approved that are waiting, the reality is, what do you think that timeline is as providers for us to be able to get to that 30 days that you're hoping is the sort of best practice case?
I don't know that I can give you a time frame for that, but I think we have to set what we want to see achieved, which, as I said, is also why we're supporting 3 months is better than no time frame. We think that original time frame for achieving the 30 days, achieving the 3 months, should be adhered to, which is the point of the comment earlier, and we will continue to advocate that it should be 30 days. I can't give you an exact time frame, but we want to set the goal and move towards it.
Sorry, Mr. Grice. Yes, you wanted to answer, Senator Blunt.
I just want to say successive governments have promised once in a generation aged care system. I guess what was promised was a needs-based system, and from the point of view of when the need arises, the care should be available. as per Craig and Pat, 30 days is that is our target as well. And I understand the government's position in terms of 3 months. The old adage, 50% of something's been 100% of nothing. And so we've just got to drive it down, but it should be needs-based. That's ultimately what we're trying to get to.
Can I just quickly ask, do you believe 30 days is a demand-driven system? Would you see that was sort of like you have to have some time built into the system? So if you actually ended up with a situation where everybody was getting their packages in 30 days, that would be sufficient to be called a demand-driven system?
I think in the scheme of things that's probably reasonable because of just the mechanics of providers and different parties being involved in the process. Is that sort of that's a reasonable time frame to work around. But you're right. Where things are immediate, you've got to respond. But I think in practical terms, to get the different stakeholders involved, that's 30 days is sort of that period in which to get that system to work.
We are. I'm sorry to cut you off, Senator Ruston, but we unfortunately there is another inquiry into in the references committee of this committee that is talking specifically to this issue. So I am conscious of that, which we'll be holding a hearing in a few weeks to further that conversation. It is unfortunate that we need to close off this session today. So I do want to thank you for your evidence and for appearing today and your continued advocacy for our older Australians. The committee will be reporting to the Senate on the 21st of August and has agreed that the responses to questions on notice that you've taken today should be made to the Secretariat by the close of business on the 14th of August. So I want to thank you for appearing today, and we will move to the next set of witnesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get started, just make sure that we have our next set of witnesses. Yes, we do. Great. I will just read a brief statement in relation to the media that's in the room. So I would like to advise representatives that representatives of the media have requested permission to film and take photographs of the committee's proceedings, and the committee has agreed to this. I remind the media that this permission can be revoked at any time, and the media must follow the direction of Secretariat staff. If a witness objects to being filmed or photographed, the committee will consider this request. The media are reminded that they are unable to take images of senators or witnesses' documents or of the audience. Media activity may not occur during suspensions or after the adjournment of proceedings. Copies of Senate Resolution number 3 concerning the broadcasting of committee proceedings are available from the Secretariat. I'd now like to welcome representatives from Baptist Care, Anglicare and Uniting Care Australia, and thank you for agreeing to appear before the committee today. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you all. For the Hansard record, could you please state your full names and the capacity which you appear today? I might start at this end.
Thank you, Senator. Casey Chambers, Executive Director, Anglicare Australia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Courtney Love, National Policy Director, Anglicare Australia.
Georgina Watson, Head of Policy, Uniting Care Australia.
I'm Dr. Robin Sampson. I'm CEO of Baptist Care Australia.
Head of Policy and Advocacy at Baptist Care Australia, Charles Dane.
Excellent. And I think we have one more witness online. line, which is Miss Maiden. We can just get you to introduce yourself. Shall we have... No?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry. So it's Emma Maiden from Uniting New South Wales ACT. I'm the Director of Advocacy and External Relations.
Excellent, thank you. I understand. I now invite you to make a short opening statement, and at the conclusion of your remarks, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions. So, Ms Chambers, if you'd like to start.
It's one of the advantages of being Anglicare, we always get to go first. Good morning and thank you for your time today. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we join you on the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people and recognise that sovereignty is never ceded, and pay my respects to elders past and present and to any First Nations people here or watching the proceedings. Anglicare Australia is a network of organisations linked to the Anglican Church of Australia. Informed by the research and practical experience of our network, Anglicare Australia seeks to influence social and economic policy, speaking with and for those most vulnerable and disadvantaged. Our members include Anglicare agencies, standalone aged care providers and social welfare organisations. Our network provides aged care services to over 82,000 older Australians each year across every state and territory. With the support of nearly 10,000 staff and 1,200 volunteers, the network provides services across residential, home and community settings. In addition to those 82,000, our network also assists older people in the community through financial counselling, emergency relief, housing and homelessness, community-based mental health programs, etc. Roughly 9 months ago, we appeared before this same committee under the previous Parliament to give evidence on what is now the Aged Care Act. During that hearing, we shared that Anglicare Australia believes that every older person should have a right to dignity and quality of life as they age, and that the new rights-based act needed to come into effect to improve the lives of older Australians now and into the future. Today, we affirm Anglicare Australia's commitment to delivering services under the new rights-based system and call on this committee to support the passage of the Aged Care and Other Legislation Amendment Bill, which will ensure the new Act can commence from the 1st of November 2025 as intended. We welcome amendments in this bill that have been made in response to sector feedback and where action has been taken to strengthen parts of the Act. This includes changes which clarify terminology under the new Act, the legislating of periodic reviews of the aged care quality standards, and the introduction of a new time-limited rule making powers for the Minister which, with appropriate safeguards, will allow for swift action to address problems arising during transition. However, it would be remiss of us not to recognise there is still a steep hill to climb. Our members still face immense challenges in delivering on ICT reforms and ensuring that their staff and, most importantly, clients are informed, especially in areas where the information is not ready. A major concern of ours is that the provisions in this bill that allow for expanded use of automated decision-making under the new Act, having witnessed only this week, yet again, hundreds of people who've had their income support unlawfully cancelled because of automated processes, and noting the remarks of the Ombudsman. We also cannot ignore that funding inequities have not been resolved in the new Act. Within residential aged care funding, Anglicare Australia continues to advocate for an urgent, independent accommodation pricing review, which is something that this bill could deliver on. Further, funding issues for home care have not been resolved, and the new system will have limited ability to alleviate the pressure being felt by older people and their families and the community and the providers who are impacted by the growing home care waitlist. What we are certain of is that people need certainty. Our members need certainty so they can deliver these reforms, and most importantly, older people need certainty that they are receiving care under a system that recognises and protects their rights. And Australians need certainty that action has been taken to address the problems identified by the Royal Commission. The passage of this bill will take us one step closer to achieving this.
Thank you. Next witness, Dr. Sampson.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this hearing, and I echo the acknowledgement of country of our colleague from Anglicare Australia. Baptist Care Australia is the national peak body for Baptist-affiliated aged care and social services. Each day our members are caring for over 5,000 residents in 64 different residential aged care facilities and over 15,000 older people living in their own homes. The aged care component of these organisations employ more than 12,000 people and operate with an annual revenue of over $1.1 billion. From single-site operators to large multi-state organisations, our members provide over 1 million days of care to older people each year. Our members are dedicated to providing the highest quality of care, and as this is the core of who we are and why our teams get up in the morning. We're in the midst of preparing to roll out a once-in-a-generation reform for aged care, and at an operational level, the scope of the work is eye-watering. These reforms touch all areas of aged care businesses, and the scale and complexity requires all aspects of the service to be redeveloped. Providers have been working at speed to identify, master and implement the detail of these reforms and to figure out how to translate the requirements in their operations. Our members are highly concerned at the potential impact of the transition on older Australians, including those already in our care and those engaging with us to explore their care needs. The biggest challenge we all face, both providers and consumers, is uncertainty. The final draft of the rules released last week are almost 700 pages long, and each requires careful consideration and investment to transpose into an operational environment. These also need to be simplified for older people and their support networks to be able to navigate these new arrangements successfully. We're very concerned regarding the ICT readiness of government departments ahead of November 1, noting that our members are also facing an incredible task to be ready in that area. Any issues of departmental readiness in this area become a grave concern for providers due to the cascading nature of ICT systems interaction and the costs involved. Some of our members are still scarred by the disastrous NDIS online payment portal launch 8 years ago and are in no mood to revisit that scenario. We call on the government to ensure that they finalise the department's ICT systems as soon as possible to ensure functionality ahead of 1 November. We remain concerned that care management funding has been reduced from 20% to 10% of package funding. Care managers have a unique and critical role to play in supporting older Australians to scope the services available and make decisions on the best care and supports they should access. This reduction in funding will reduce services just at a point when people are facing complex new arrangements. A lower percentage allocation for care management may also limit how well the system plans, coordinates and responds to changing needs, particularly for those with complex and evolving care requirements. To ensure older people receive the support they need, particularly during transition, the care management cap should be returned to 20%. We add our voice to support the request to see additional home care packages released immediately. There's significant need in the community, and we look to the government to implement their commitment on this line. We want to be clear that we are not here to relitigate technical aspects of these bills, nor the wider Aged Care Act. We just ask that the government heeds the call of advocates from every aspect of the aged care sector and passes these bills as soon as possible. We see then that there be immediate confirmation of the final rules to allow the sector to be ready on 1 November. The report for this inquiry is due on August 21st. The Senate sits the following week. Please get this done. We appreciate the work of the government, departments and Commission to get us to this point, but at this stage we must prioritise certainty for the sector so that older people are not impacted. They must remain the focus of this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Uniting Care Australia, so I'm not sure if it's Ms Maiden or yourself, Ms Watson.
It'll be me. Thanks, Senator. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today to discuss these two bills which will support commencement of the Aged Care Act 2024. Uniting Care Australia is the national body for the Uniting Churches Community Services. Our mandate is to advocate for policies and practices which enhance the dignity of all people, especially those who are most vulnerable. The Uniting Care Aged Care Network is the largest network of not-for-profit aged care providers in the country. This includes Uniting New South Wales ACT, represented by my colleague Emma Maiden, who's online here today. Our aged care network delivers services to approximately 95,000 older people and has more than 220 residential aged care homes across all states and territories, including in capital cities, regional towns and very remote parts of Australia. While we know there will continue to be policy and technical challenges in aged care, and I echo the concerns that my colleagues have raised here today, on balance, our recommendation is that these two amendment bills be passed so that the new Aged Care Act can commence on 1 November 2025 as intended. It is in the best interest of older Australians, their families and providers that they have certainty on the commencement of this new legislation. Providers in the Uniting Care Network are committed to a rights-based framework and delivering quality care to older Australians, and they have been working hard to prepare for these reforms. We have been on the journey of reform from the Royal Commission to the Senate inquiry into the Aged Care Bill in October last year, and now here we are so close to the start line. We look forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I might go to your position, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much. Obviously you've all made a very clear statement about wanting the bills to pass so that we can start on the 1st of November. Can I assure you that both the government and the coalition are absolutely committed to making sure that this rights-based act comes into force on the 1st of November. But this is sort of our last chance, I suppose, to make any changes that you have been able to sort of consider since the bill went through in November. I mean, this is a whopping great amendment bill in the terms of 325 changes and 197 repeals, and the bill hasn't even been put in place yet. So we just want to make sure that we've got it right. This is our last chance because we don't want the bill delayed any further. But we also are very concerned and keen to your understanding around making sure the scrutiny, once the bill actually is put in place, is strong, because I have to tell you, 24 months of these ministerial direction provisions is quite unusual. It's a very, very long opportunity for the minister to make changes without the normal scrutiny of the Parliament, whether it be through rules and delegated legislation or amendments. So just be clear, we are absolutely as one in terms of making sure that this act comes into place. So can I just ask all of you, do you think that you currently have enough information to make sure that the many hundreds of thousands of people that you look after collectively have got the information to understand what is going to happen, either those that will be required to make some sort of transition, so obviously those that aren't grandfathered, those that are grandfathered that still will be impacted, and obviously those that will be coming into your system following the bill, the Act coming into place? Are you happy you've got the information that you need and that your people you care for need so that they understand what is about to happen?
Thanks, Senator. I think that is a real concern, but pragmatically, I'm not sure that holding up the bill would gain us that information. There's been a dearth of that kind of information around for years in our experience. I'm sure my colleague won't mind me saying, but Courtney and I have both had experience in the system recently, and as professionals that work in it, we have still struggled to find our way through it. And that is something I've heard consistently over the 10 years I've been in this position. So I think there is a need for clear information, but I also think some of that information is cultural in a way, in that it needs to get out. We need to get the Act working so that some of the knowledge can start to spread into those seniors networks. And so whilst I don't think we have the information at present, I think there is goodwill from the department to try and get that. But we actually also need the goodwill of the providers and of everybody out there in the community to make sure that information, with all due respect to our department colleagues is actually easy to be understood by people in the community. And I'm not sure that that would happen until we've got the Act in place.
May I add? Thank
Please.
you, Senator.
Sorry, that wasn't me donging you. That was by accident.
As I said in my statement, I think our biggest challenge is uncertainty. So there is a lot of information now available, but the big challenge is it's still in draft form or otherwise not sort of finalised, and that's where the gap is. I think for us, we're getting to the point where the information is there. We need to get the green light to go with that information and roll it out. Thank you.
Sure.
Echoing what everyone said, just really important that the information is accessible for providers and older people. The fact that the rules have been released is positive, and that takes us one step closer to providers being able to have service agreements in place, for example, making sure they've got all that detail from the rules but also from Services Australia will be really critical. I might hand over to my colleague Emma, who actually works for a provider, if you have anything more to add, Emma.
Yeah, so I just, one particular artefact that we're really keen to get and we would love support to get it as soon as possible is the Support at Home manual. And this is will give us a lot more information that we need in terms of that change. But, you know, we were working towards the previous date of the 1st of July, and obviously having this extra time has been really helpful. But what we really, and now we've got the rules, all the wheels are in motion internally to be meeting that deadline, but that Support at Home manual is a piece of information that we really would like to get as soon as we can.
Yep. Okay, great. So, Dr. Sampson, you raised, or you all raised issues around ICT. I'm just keen to understand, just from a really practical perspective, when do you need to know what the individual co-contribution amounts are for you to have the ability to have a proper conversation with the people that you currently are in your care, to allow that to be incorporated into the new service agreements? Because I'm sort of thinking we hear the bills, hopefully through the Parliament in last week of August, first week of September, goes to royal assent. Then the systems need to be in place. Have you got any concerns around the ability for you to have that information? So when is sort of like the last date you need that co-contribution information for you to start to put your service agreements in place?
Yesterday. I guess you address the question to me, I'll answer first. But
yeah, sure, please.
I couldn't speak for our providers whether they have a clear drop-dead date, so to speak, on that particular part of the system needs, and maybe others can speak to that with more certainty. But I think there is a whole complex range of things that feed into that obviously that co-contribution element is significant, but the systems development that we're talking about are so much larger than that one component, but that is extraordinarily important, that's true.
So to that point, my understanding is that there are two types of systems that are being talked about in relation to how that information comes in. I think it's an API and a CSV. Do you even know which system you're going to be required to interface with in terms of the relationship, obviously, that you're going to have with Services Australia, one imagines, in order for you to actually be able to get the administrative component of this delivered? So, I mean, where are you concerned about the interface in terms of ICT, and what are your concerns around that ICT interface?
I might open up to Emma. Would be better place to talk to ICT readiness.
Thanks.
Yeah, the ICT issue is really really a huge one, to be honest. I mean, I think it's about $10,000 in funding that's been provided to organisations to upgrade their systems very comprehensively to deal with, people who are being grandfathered, and all these new layers of complexity. So, we're a large organisation and it's a very substantial investment, but even for smaller organisations, it would be also a really big undertaking to get that ready. In terms of API or CSV, I'm sorry, I can't give you that amount of detail, but the department itself allocated $1.4 billion for it to upgrade its systems, and getting the tech right in order to get the system working as we all want it to be, as simple and seamless for older people to get the right quality care is something we all want, and it is a really huge investment in those systems. We're doing it, and we'll be ready for the 1st of November. But it's not a small task, and it is something that our submission that we'll be putting in later today is addressing, is the need for more support for providers to get those systems right and those interfaces right.
I mean, you guys are all pretty big. In fact, you're enormous. So in terms of your individual, you've got rural and regional operators and the like, clearly you're supporting them. Are you getting any feedback from some of your smaller operators and your rural and regional ones that they are more concerned about their ability to be prepared, or are they just relying on you as their umbrella organisation to be delivering? Because I noticed that you were saying that, is it Miss Mawson? Manson? Watson. Oh, don't mind me. I probably need new glasses. Sorry, I could look at, yeah. So sorry, Miss Watson. Okay. That you actually are a provider, but you're quite a big provider, am I gathering from your comments?
We have services in remote parts of the Northern Territory, WA and Queensland, and I'd say the main concerns we hear more broadly are around, taking the time to travel and have those conversations with, home care clients, and lack of funding. Smaller organisations don't have the scale of resources to be able to implement ICT the way larger organisations would. So I can't go into. I don't have all the detail necessarily, but I think the main concern is just distance.
I mean, this is the 1st of November is actually a Saturday, which is interesting in and of itself. So, can you just tell, if I'm correct here? So, it'll be brought in on a Saturday. So obviously everyone's it'll go live on Saturday, and given the timeframes, it's not likely to have a soft start. It's going to start on the Saturday. Will that mean that the first billing period, the bills will be required on the 2nd of or the 1st of November or thereabouts? So are your billings retrospective? And are they monthly? How does that work?
I think what I'll note there is something that was raised as a concern with 1 November as the start date is that it's partway through a quarter. So 1 July was a clean start of financial year, start of a new quarter, and 1 November is partway through a quarter. So as far as I'm concerned, I think providers were still trying to wrap their heads around how that was going to work, but that's all I can say to that at this stage.
Yeah, I suppose just the concern being you don't want to end up with a situation where you find out there is a problem with something in early December, and then we all know what happens in December and January, and we just want to make sure that older Australians are properly cared for during that time, or that you are actually receiving the finances that you need to be able to continue to pay your staff and look after older Australians. So yeah, please.
It's a very obvious point, but I think it's worth stating. I think there are as many responses to it as there are providers in a way, and I really appreciate your concern for smaller providers. But larger providers also bring their own kind of issues, and fitting in with audit cycles, fitting in with the ICT of the 10 grand. It's not really an awful lot when people are already running legacy systems, and you've got to fit this in depending on what systems you've already got. So I know you'd appreciate that as a businesswoman. I think what we're looking looking at is whenever the Act comes in, and obviously the 1st of July, start of a new financial year, would have been the cleanest. But whenever it comes in, I know that our providers, and I'm sure I probably speak for the panel, will do what they can to absorb a mess for the first couple of months, and there will be a greater loss to them, because what we want to make sure is that older Australians don't feel that. And certainly with the information, with the funding, with everything, certainly from where we sit, I can't speak for profit providers, but I'm not speaking against them either. I know that what we'll be doing is leaning over backwards to make sure that we're the ones that have the uncertainty, that have the detriment, and that hopefully the older people won't feel that. But each and every single one of our providers will have a different issue with trying to retrofit this into large ICT systems that they already have.
Can I just, Senator Delija has a follow-up question just relating to this. Sorry, Senator Ruston. Sure. Senator Delija, I'm just going to allocate the call to you just to follow up on that.
He's still on mute.
We can't hear.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Thanks. Sorry about that. I had trouble getting off mute. My question is to, and sorry if I get your titles correct, Dr. Chambers or Dr. Love. I understand that your organisation's represented by the Aged Care Transition Task Force. And I assume you guys have had briefings from the departments on the bills. Can you sort of tell me about how it's been helpful for you guys and for others in understanding provisions included within them?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you on behalf of myself and Courtney for our promotion there. I think in our opening remarks, we certainly pointed out that what are becoming known as the Henry VIII provisions need to have proper safeguards, and that needs to really be very well, founded within the sector. And I think one of the things that's been unclear for that transition task force is just how much of that information that they get on that they can bring back to their networks, how they can spread that. And I think that is part of those proper safeguards, is that those groups are very clear about where they can take that information, where they can gather information, how secret squirrel some of that stuff is. And I think that would be a really good clarification as we move forward, particularly noting the concerns that 24 months is a long time for that kind of freedom, and also noting that possibly the Transition Task Force alone isn't enough to provide those safeguards.
Thank you very much. I don't want to steal the floor. Does Michelle, do you want to ask a question as well, or?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Josh, and thank you, Chair. Can you hear? I'm assuming you can all hear me.
Yes.
Yes, yep. Great. This is not directed to any specific person, so anyone can answer this. I guess, we've talked a lot about organisational change. Organisational change is always hard. It is always bumpy, and we expect that to happen, and hence we put in this 24-month provision to help the minister be as flexible as possible. But I don't really want to kind of focus on that. I want to zoom out onto really the generational impact of these reforms and what they actually mean on the ground for Australians, for staff, for the sector, which is only going to grow over the next 40 years as the population ages. Could you give us a little bit of insight into what this means for those groups of people?
Can I jump in on that, because it's something I've been giving a lot of thought to, and that is to say that I think older Australians, their families, the people that work with them are still hanging out to get respect, to have the respect that that they deserve, that older people in our community should have. And I do feel that whilst it might not be the most identifiable or thing for us to look at, that this is a very important thing, that if we do delay this bill yet again, this sends a further message. And I think that, we risk losing confidence in what has been, to people out there who aren't involved in Parliament day to day, I think people have seen that there has been a fairly reasonable bipartisan response to the Royal Commission, that there have been very positive messages from all sides of Parliament, and I don't think that we should do anything to erode that confidence. I think being old is hard enough sometimes, and that whilst this might seem an esoteric point, I really do think that if we don't pass this, we do risk eroding that feeling that these people are being seen, that they are visible and that they are valued.
May I also add, in terms of on-the-ground impact, I cannot underestimate how much support at home is needed. Older people have told us, and we're very well aware, that they want to age at home, they want to age in place, and they want to be supported to do that. And the system that we're operating under right now, is trying its best, but it's not up to speed with the way that people want to age now. And this bill, the Act that has passed and the new program that is coming in, is going to provide a whole lot more support to the generation now and the ageing generations, to give them increased levels of support, more flexible levels of support at home, and to properly reflect that people are living longer, and that they're doing things different in their life, and that they want to age in their communities. So that's something I would stress.
And may I add as well, thank you, Senator, for that question. This is a radical transformation of aged care. I mean, the thing that springs to mind particularly for me in response to your question is the fact this is a rights-based approach to aged care. And I know that there might be concerns that could end up being lip service, but I think there is such strong mechanisms in place that we will actually see a reorientation of systems towards the individual and their preferences as well as their needs. And I'm really excited, and I think our members are really excited to continue to mature what that looks like over the next 10 to 20 years. This is going to take, although we've been talking about this is our last chance with this bill, this will be in place for a long time, and I'm sure that we'll find the context in which it operates changes, and we will need to tweak and reform as we evolve as a society. But I think that is central, and I cannot see that being part of the reforms in the future, and I'm really excited about having locked that in.
Just one more thing, Senator. We speak about how excited we are for this generational change and it being so consequential, and I know our members are very excited for the new wave care for their clients. I do want to bring it back to our requests for certainty and clarity. So I've already had our colleagues at Anglicare Australia talk about how our providers will need to bear a little bit of the brunt once the Act comes in of the uncertainty, and we're very keen and happy to do that because the care of older Australians is utmost in our priorities. We need the government to pass these bills as soon as possible. This is monumental change, and I know you're excited about it, Senator, but delaying it to the second sitting week or the third sitting week that you come back, every single time that it's delayed creates more uncertainty for the sector and for the providers. And we want to be as certain as we can that the transformation of this new bills will happen seamlessly. And that must be remembered when we talk about how significant the change will be.
Thank you. We completely share your desire to have these bills passed as quickly as possible.
I'm just going to go back to Senator Ruston.
And once again, can I just really reassure you, Mr Dane, the purpose of these questions has got nothing to do with trying to delay anything. We are absolutely on side that this needs to happen. But I do remain very concerned that we've got 325 changes here, 197 repeals in this bill before the actual primary act has even come into place. And I want to make sure that whatever we do, this is our last chance to make sure that we not only make your lives easy, but we make the lives easy for the older Australians that rely on you. So this is, absolutely no attempt whatsoever to delay anything. We understand that this needs to go forward, but we're hearing some very significant concerns from those that appeared before you and you about things. I mean, not the least of which, I'd be very keen to understand. And maybe, Dr. Sampson, this is to you. How long will it take you to do your ICT build once you know what the final outcome of the implications of this legislation and the rules and the like that sit with it, and the information that you will receive from the government as to what each and every one of your patients or residents or clients have? What is the ICT build time?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information. I think there is time and there is cost, and both of them have interactive elements. So, as I said when you first asked about ICT, yesterday would have been the preference to have the clarity on these things, not least because most of our systems are actually, we are specialists in care and service delivery. We're not specialists in technology and information and communication technology. So it's not like we have developed our own software systems for all the different things we do, billing, care management, recording, reporting, all those things. So we're actually working with outsourced providers for a lot of the ICT systems that we use. It's just the way it has to go. It's so specialised. So there's a lot of interaction with those providers. So they're probably the ones who are better placed to answer that question. Thank you.
Sure. Can I just ask you about something else? The government promised 83,000 home care packages to come into effect on the 1st of July, or start to be released on the 1st of July. Then subsequently, when the Act got delayed for some reason, which I'll ask the department, those packages release was delayed. Obviously you guys need to gear up in terms of workforce and resourcing if you know that new packages are coming into the system. Did the last minute decision to delay the introduction of those packages have any impact on your the management of your workforce and the like to be ready to be able to go on the 1st of July, and then boom, it's not the 1st of July?
I just wanted to mention, so I actually met with representatives from one of our members that is a sole aged care provider in Victoria only last week, and we were having a very interesting conversation around the fact that there was big stress with the provision of home care around recruitment drives and getting the workforce there. And they were baffled by the fact that they were still having a lot of stress around providing care, but the problem had flipped because now there's a bottleneck in the home care system. Not as many packages are turning over just because of this growing bottleneck and wait list in that people aren't going up or moving on to different package levels. So now they were struggling in some particularly regional and rural areas to meet the contracted hours for their home care staff. And so this growing wait list was meaning that these people have to find other work, and they would otherwise be able to provide these packages and provide the care to people that very much need it, but they can't because the home care packages aren't coming into the system and there's not as much turnover as there has been in previous years.
It comes back to certainty again. So when there was that decision made to extend to the 1st of November, one of our very large providers, in fact I think one of our largest in Queensland, had the very day before called it and gone out with all the information to all the older people who were using them. And that has the effect, again, it's just uncertainty, it doesn't help. But in terms of our home care providers, there were individual staff who were then talking to clients about things that they then had to go back and talk about to renege on. So I think that certainty and that desire for certainty probably underlies most of our pleas. Once we're certain on things, we can do a lot with it. But it's the uncertainty that we're struggling with.
Did the government ever give you any indication as to why they delayed the release of these packages? Because they don't appear to be in any way, shape or form connected to the Act. So did you get any information as to why they delayed?
I can't. There wasn't any explicit reason, but my understanding is the tie to the introduction of support at home, so that injection with the new system, as kind of people move into packages that are subject, or not subject because there's the grandfathering laws, but to kind of supplement where that transition is being made.
So the fact that if they'd come in on between the 1st of July and the 1st of November, they would have been on the old system for 4 months before they transitioned, and I'm assuming you've got a whole heap of people that are in that situation from the 12th of September through to the 1st of July anyway, so it wasn't like we had a different cohort. I mean, can I just ask you, so in the 4 months between the 1st of July and the 1st of November, have there been any new home care packages put into the system, or are you just relying on the turnover of those packages that, for obvious reasons, are no longer required?
I'll speak to it if you like. That's correct. There are, as far as I'm aware, there's no new packages entered into the system. So it does rely on someone exiting the system for whatever reason, but obviously there are very sad reasons often that someone exits a care system. May I also speak to an earlier point, which is Baptist Care, which is the largest member of our national network. They scaled up their workforce to start to roll out additional home care packages ahead of 1 July, and so they certainly did prepare and then found themselves in a situation with spare workforce capacity when the announcement was made. I also wanted to flag that providers are struggling as well with the fact that many of the older people in their care will have been reassessed for a greater level of care, but the wait list is also affecting them. So providers are providing higher levels of care to people without the additional funding attached because they are responsible to do that, and it's having a big impact in lots of ways as well.
Yeah,
I am conscious of the time, so
sure.
I'm sorry that we need to move on to the next witness.
Just really quickly, so am I right in saying that older Australians were denied care that was actually available to them because you had scaled up to provide it, simply because the government chose not to put the packages into the system?
I think, Senator, that would be definitely a question for the department, but we're not aware why that decision was made. I think we can talk very firmly about the kind of reform fatigue that's going on in our sector, and so I think it really just felt like, well, there's another change and we're not sure why. What I can say, and I know there's another inquiry where we can talk about this, is we could have so many more home care packages that they would be swallowed up. And I think that that's where our reform needs to happen over the years, to change into that, to make sure that people get that care. And I hope that when this system rolls out, they will, so people aren't going prematurely into residential aged care or aren't in hospital beds, but I certainly, we're not aware of why that decision was made, but we can tell you about what happened when that decision was made, including as having spare capacity and staff.
Yeah. So thank you, and sorry, Senator Ruston, and I will put a fence around that because there is another inquiry that will go into much more detail to articulate some of that further story in relation to the home care packages. I want to thank you for appearing today and the evidence that you've provided. The committee will report to the Senate on Thursday the 21st of August and has agreed that the responses to the questions on notice should be provided by the close of business on Thursday the 14th of August to the Secretariat. And we will move to the next witnesses. Thank you very much. I now welcome via teleconference Mr Tim Hicks, representing Bolton Clark. Thank you for appearing today before the committee, and I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, could you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear today?
Thank you, Senators. Tim Hicks, Executive General Manager of Policy and Advocacy for Bolton Clark.
Thank you. I now invite you to make a short opening statement. I'm just cognisant we've only got about 20 minutes with you, and at the conclusion of your remarks, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions.
Thank you. So Bolton Clark is Australia's largest independent not-for-profit aged care provider with 140 years of history and a team of 16,000 people delivering the full continuum of care across 11,000 daily home care and home support visits, 43 retirement villages and 88 residential care homes. Everything we do is dedicated to enabling, celebrating and supporting older Australians to live and age positively. Immense progress has been made in aged care since the Royal Commission, and since 2018, Commonwealth spending on aged care has risen from 0.9 to 1.5% of GDP, with additional funding mainly supporting higher wages, more staff in residential care and more home care packages. There have been statistically significant improvements in quality of life, consumer experience, clinical indicators and regulatory compliance. And if we look across various surveys conducted in various ways, what we see is that at least 70 and as much as 85% of care recipients express strongly positive views about their experience in home care and in residential care. National workforce pressures have significantly eased, with more applications for jobs, lower turnover, fewer vacancies. Staffing is still tighter than it was before COVID, and there are significant challenges in certain regional areas, but there have also been significant improvements. The transition to subsidies based on independent prices has helped to stabilise residential care provider finances, and increased private contributions under the new Act will help align incentives, manage future fiscal pressures and support increased construction. There are still some major areas for further work, in particular improving access and addressing shortages in supply, and that needs to be supported by ongoing reform, including improved cost effectiveness. I can't tell you that from our perspective the new Act is perfect, and perhaps the biggest gap for us is that the Act does not enshrine a right to access to care for older people. However, I mention this mainly to emphasise my key message today, which is that regardless of policy disagreements, big or small, the priority at present should be to pass this bill and ensure the rules are registered as soon as possible thereafter. The rules need to be registered so that Services Australia can undertake comprehensive means testing assessments for a significant number of home support recipients. And whilst it's possible for us to proceed as providers without this information in discussing new prices and new care plans with older Australians, it's far from ideal. We would have managed had the 1 July commencement date not been shifted, but we would prefer to have more time this time. We've been around for 140 years. We can make nearly anything work. But if we could have the rules manage to be registered on 1 September rather than 1 October, that would make an enormous difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Hicks. I'm going to go to Senator Ruston.
Yeah, thank you. Just on your comments around the packages and the fact that we had those 83,000 packages that were promised in the election campaign and that we thought were going to start on the 1st of July, we now are assuming that they'll start to be provided on the 1st of November. In terms of your lead time in order to be able to scale up your operations to meet the demand of new packages being released, what is the lead time that you would ultimately like to know? So, you know, do you need to know that there will be, of those 83,000 packages that we hope will actually be released, what the profiling of that is over the 12 months and what sort of time frame?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Yeah, absolutely. We do need to know what the profiling of the release of those packages is going to be, and the sooner that we know, the faster we can scale up. So, you know, whilst it's probably impractical to release 83,000 on 1 November, the sooner we do know how many are going to be released, the more we could reasonably take and factor into our business planning. And I'm sure that's true across all providers.
I mean, obviously, you only can speak on behalf of Bolton Clark, but you're pretty big. how quickly do you think the sector would be able to scale up to be able to provide the care for those 83,000 packages if they were released pretty quickly? Is the capacity in the workforce there?
So again, I think that depends on when we're told that they're going to be released. If we only find out that they're being released after 1 November, then our capacity to scale up is going to be slower. If government is able to advise us today, tomorrow, next week, what the profiling of those packages is going to be, we'll be able to scale up much more quickly. There was, I think we'd anticipated on a pro rata basis, something like 27,000 packages to be released over the sort of 4 months that are covered by the delay. That's just my estimate on a pro rata basis, I'd hasten to add, not something that government's necessarily advised us. We would be able to take on that quantity of packages very, very quickly after the commencement of support at home, as long as we have some early advice that that's what's going to happen in terms of the release schedule.
Okay, thanks. One thing we haven't talked about this morning is actually the second bill, which is the Levy bill. Are you aware of the second bill?
I am.
Yep. So I'm interested to understand this bill. My understanding is the bill only seeks to change a terminology to meet modern day standards. But keen to understand, to your knowledge, has the provisions of this levy opportunity ever been put in or used by any government in the last 20 years?
To my knowledge, the levy has never been invoked since it was introduced in 2006.
Okay. So I suppose if you have a look at what the bill actually enables, provides for, if it's never been used, well, maybe you could tell me what is the purpose of the bill? Is it, my understanding is it is in relation to the sector gets levied if a provider is unable to meet its obligations. Is that correct?
My understanding is to secure the constitutional basis for that levy, given the changes to the Aged Care Act. Now, that's a long-term government policy across a number of governments, one that we fundamentally disagree with. It seems misguided if there is significant financial pressure on the sector causing a need to invoke the deposit guarantee to then add to that financial pressure with an additional levy on the sector. That would be enhancing and expanding systemic risk, which is almost the opposite of what you'd expect good government policy to be, which is why I think it's never been implemented. So as to why it continues to be government policy, I can't speak to that.
Okay. So I suppose the first question would be, you don't believe that this bill is necessary any longer, or that it ever was necessary, I suppose?
Look, I think there's a matter of public administration in play here. We have a separate piece of legislation which enlivens the power to exercise this levy. This bill is seeking to make sure that existing legislation has a stable constitutional basis. I think, in an ideal world, yes, it would be better for that not to be that policy not to be in place from our perspective as a provider. Perhaps government has some rationale for maintaining it, but at the same time, I'm cautious of undermining sort of the stable basis of public administration, and I am very conscious that, notwithstanding the fact that the power exists, it's never been used. So this kind of goes to some of the broader issues that are in play in the context of this major legislative change, where to some extent we have to put some faith in effective public administration and sensible exercise of the powers that government has been granted.
Well, obviously they have sensibly exercised it because they've never exercised it at all. But it does beg the question, why are we amending a piece of legislation that seems that it's superfluous to requirements? Maybe it's time for us to actually be looking to repeal this legislation instead of just going through another administrative process to amend something that it doesn't seem like it's got any... Well, it has a purpose, but a purpose that's never been used. We will prosecute that with the department. Just more broadly, in terms of the timeframes that we're left in order for us to be in place on the 1st of November, and obviously understand the professionalism of your organisation that you've outlined means you'll be ready. Have you got any concerns around between where we are sitting here today and your ability to put everything that you need to in place on the 1st of November because of information that you don't have, whether that is information in relation to service agreement data, information in relation to your requirements in terms of ICT changes, etc. Do you have any gaps that would preclude you or prevent you from being able to effectively start on the 1st of November? And if so, what's your time frame in requiring that information in order for you to be able to be ready to go?
Look, I think a key piece of information was the release of the final draft rules. And whilst they are not the final rules because the Act itself hasn't been finalised, they do give us most of the information that we need to proceed with things like the finalisation of our service agreements. We won't actually be able to send them out until it's all formally in place, but it lets us start doing that work. The key issue, the key source of complications in the commencement on 1 July from our perspective is the access to the information on the means testing assessments of all the individuals under support at home. And our understanding is that Services Australia can't conduct a number of those means testing assessments until the rules are registered, hence my comments in the opening statement that what we really need to do is make sure those rules are registered as soon as possible. Now, if we don't get that information or if we get it late, we can still make the process work as we would have on 1 July, but it will put unnecessary pressure on our staff and it will make it unnecessarily difficult for older Australians to be making information about the services that they want to receive without knowing exactly what their co-contributions are going to be.
So to that end, obviously, there is a huge amount of older Australians that you are going to have to renegotiate service agreements with. Do you think that those older Australians have got the necessary information to make them fully cognisant of what the implications of the changes of this Act are going to be? And do you have any concerns about that?
If you permit me a bit of humour, I don't think that there's a single person in Australia that's fully cognisant of all the impacts of the changes in legislation. It's a big, complex piece of reform with a lot of things that are going on, and some of which we'll only fully understand once we actually get through to the commencement of the new Act. I think that older Australians are going to have to rely very much on their providers and their providers communicating with them about what's going on, answering their questions, supporting them about their uncertainties. And so it's imperative that we as an organisation have the information and then we cascade that down to our staff members and train them adequately to understand from a practical perspective what it means for them in their day-to-day services. And for the most part, for most people, particularly those who are grandfathered in respect of their co-contributions, it won't mean a change in the services that they're able to purchase. Their day-to-day support will be maintained. And so one of our key messages to our clients is to sort of not panic. Whilst a lot of changes happening in the background, it is a big, complex and enormous bill from their perspective in terms of the services they receive. Very little will change for most of them post 1 November.
I'm just interested in the cohort of people that are that have come into the system from the 12th of September through to the 1st of November. Do you think there is adequate understanding that their circumstances, their financial circumstances, will change on the 1st of November? Because they're clearly not grandfathered.
Yeah, I think that's why we need to have the rules registered, and so we can kind of continue that communication with those people. It's a tricky issue when we're in this position of uncertainty because we could have commenced and would have commenced some of those conversations prior to 1 July. But held off on doing that because it would have been confusing. We couldn't have given them all the information that they needed about what would actually happen from 1 November. So I'm sure some of them are keeping abreast of what's going on in policy land and looking at the changes that are coming down for them, but some of them will be waiting for us to be able to explain the changes to them. And the sooner we get the rules registered and all that information, the sooner we'll be able to help them through that process.
And just finally, because I'm getting the eye from the chair, in terms of the transition arrangements have you got any concerns around residential care transition? Because we seem to be all talking about support at home and home care. Are there any concerns that you have in relation to the ability to transition when it comes to residential care?
No.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Ruston. Senator Ananda Raja, you have the call.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. I used to refer patients to Bolton Clark from public hospital, so it's very nice to meet you and to hear your testimony. I want to thank your aged care workers for all the care that they provided to my patients and to millions of patients around this country. I guess my question is related to this perception that the deferral has actually completely paused home care packages being released. My understanding is that that's not actually the case, that these are still being released by the department based on priority, particularly to high needs individuals. Is that correct? And if so, can you elaborate, please?
Yeah, sure. One of the challenges with aged care is that there's so much terminology and so many words that have very specific and precise meanings. So under the legislation, the term release means the release of a package to a person, not the expansion in the number of packages that are available. So what is happening at the moment is that as packages are made available by people leaving the program, those packages are then re-released to other people who are waiting on the queue. However, the total number of packages is not increasing, and consequently the queue continues to grow.
Okay. Just a question. Other than this notion of a statement of rights, and older Australians want to be treated with respect. That's what we've heard from the get-go. You have such a huge workforce, something like 16,000 people. When we talk about respect, I don't just mean the carers and the aged care workers interfacing with the patient and caring for them and treating them with respect, which we take as a given, but of course the systems also treating older Australians with respect. And that's part of the work that we're trying to do with this generation reform, right? And it starts at the top of government and it gets pushed all the way through the system, and it's going to take years. But I'm just curious to know, how do you inculcate in your workforce that notion of respect?
I think it's a question of values and culture, and respect is one of our organisational values. And I suppose I would also clarify this notion that the new Act will lead to older people being treated with respect. Insofar as aged care, the aged care system operates, I think that almost every worker on almost every occasion treats the person that they're looking after with respect. What the new Act does is, one, provides a sort of slightly more secure regulatory basis, legislative basis for that, and two, acts as an important symbolic change, I think, for us as a whole, as a country, to emphasise that older Australians do have those rights and that they're non-negotiable. So for us, we're running through training programs with our workforce on the new Act and on all the changes that it contains. That's a big exercise, and in fact, one of the challenges is with the deferral and some of the changes that have sort of come in, small changes that are coming through. We might have to revisit a couple of elements of what's in that training just to make it all completely up to date. But it's an ongoing process. It's not just a one-off. It's something we continue to do day in, day out. It's something our leaders embody in the way that they interact with their team members, and they incorporate into their own behaviour. So I suppose it's a difficult question to answer because it goes to almost everything that we do and we try to ask our staff to do on a day-to-day basis.
Has the deferral period brought you more time to perform that kind of training?
Well, the training piece had already been set up for commencing on 1 November. On 1 July. So yes, it gives us more training. In some respects, it makes things a little bit tricky because people have to remember what they were trained on prior to 1 July, and they sort of continue under the current system for a couple of months, not using that knowledge, and then they'll have to sort of recollect it all again. When 1 November commences. Now, I don't think it's a massive problem because most of the, as I said, mostly what the new Act is doing is enshrining some important symbolic messages, and the actual day-to-day operations of most of our services will continue to be good care, just as they were previously. But in fact, to some extent, it's a little bit of a sort of pausing, balancing just before the starting gun. And we're sort of, I guess, looking forward to actually having that process commence.
Yeah, I think just from a learning perspective, messages don't really stick with one hit, right? It needs to be continuous. And I think, honestly, professional development, particularly for a care workforce dealing with a vulnerable group of people, my personal view is that should be a continuous endeavour to maintain standards.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think we've got to be, again, really careful about terminology because professional development in a sort of healthcare context often means something that a professional worker has an obligation to do as part of their registration, and they're in sometimes obligated to do that themselves, fund it themselves. What we have in aged care is a very skilled but not a professional workforce, and I think we're straying into a future sort of policy issue that having that obligation on them to kind of do their own professional development is probably a step too far. But we do need to make sure that they are trained and supported to have the capabilities that they need. And there's various issues in the system that we could look at to address that. So, one of the things that we think is a bit backwards is that the staffing rules currently don't let us count training time towards our care minutes. So there's an active disincentive to allocate time towards training in that element of the policy settings. But we'll work through all these issues as the new Act, as we get through the sort of event horizon of the new Act.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Nandaraja, and thank you, Mr Hicks, for providing your evidence today to the committee. The committee will report to the Senate on Thursday, the 21st of August, and has agreed that responses to questions on notice, should you have taken them, be provided by the close of business Thursday, the 14th of August, to this Secretariat. The committee will now suspend for a short break and recommence at 11:35.
Thank you.
representatives from the United Workers Union. Dr. Diamond, are you online? Yes. Thank you for appearing before the committee today. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and protection of witnesses giving evidence to Senate committees has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today.
Thank you, Senator. I appear to have a echo coming back at my own voice, so I'm not quite sure. I'll try and power through. My name is Tim Diamond. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst for the Strategic Power Portfolio for the United Workers Union, and I'm also a member of the Aged Care Transition Task Force.
Excellent. I now invite you to make just a short opening statement. At the conclusion of any remarks that you make, I'll invite members of the committee to ask you some questions.
Okay, thank you. And before I go further, I'd just like to acknowledge and respect the continuing spirit, culture and contributions of the traditional owners of the land on which we're working now. And extend our respects to traditional custodians of all the places that United Workers Union members live and work around the country. I'm coming to you from Whadjuk Noongar land here in Western Australia. The United Workers Union has 150,000 members across the country, working in more than 45 industries and all walks of life. United Workers Union represents members in both residential and in-home aged care services, performing various roles day and night, including care workers, hospitality staff and cooks, cleaners, lifestyle assistants, enrolled nurses, laundry workers and maintenance workers. Now, the United Workers Union, UWU, has supported the need for a new Aged Care Act to improve the quality of care throughout the aged care sector, as highlighted by the findings of the Aged Care Royal Commission. Adopting a person-centred approach for older people through the system and focusing on their right to access high-quality care is crucial. To that end, aged care legislation, whether the new Act or these Amendment Acts, should recognise the role of the aged care workforce on the ground in supporting the rights of older people and to ensure their high quality care. So transparency and accountability within the new aged care system are crucial. Of the two bills being considered, Aged Care Accommodation Payment Security Levy and the Aged Care and Other Legislation Amendment Bill, or the ACOLA, my focus will be on the ACOLA. And specifically, United Workers Union supports the changing of star ratings to include compliance information, including whether a provider is meeting care minutes. I think that's in the proposed subsection 5412. Having regular reviews of the aged care quality standards, which I think is an addition to section 15. However, there are three further points we'd like to make. While using more compliance information is welcome, there still needs to be more transparency and accountability about how star ratings are formulated. Union members, United Workers Union, Health Services Union, Nurses Federations have set up an Aged Care Watch website through which they independently report star ratings that tell a very different story from that of employers. For example, more than 82% rated their aged care facilities as only 1 or 2 stars out of staffing, which indicates a fundamental problem with providers meeting their care time minutes targets. I heard, I think, Mr. Hicks from Bolton Clark talking beforehand about they wanted to count training towards care time minutes. We think that would be an extremely bad idea because it's hard enough to get people get these providers to meet their care time minutes without trying to make the enforcement of what constitutes care time, frankly, sloppier. Providers should be held to account for properly training their staff and properly delivering their care time minutes. As far as the reviews, look, we think 5 years between the reviews is a long time. Given the importance of getting the new system right, timeframes for the review should be shorter. So that is envisaged within for the first review, at any rate being held before 5 years. It could be held in 2 years after the Minister's rule-making power expires, and should be more frequently after that, 2 to 3 years after that. Half a decade, we think, is a while. Now, while those are two improvements, the system itself could be further improved by having a mechanism for the worker voice within the aged care system, as was envisaged in the first reading version of the new aged care bill. This would certainly boost accountability within the aged care systems by, among other things, helping determine if the compliance information is accurate, and would make the reviews more comprehensive and well-informed. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm happy to take questions from the committee. I have a document that I would like to table at some point. I take the committee's advice about the best way to do that remotely. And once again, apologies, I'm getting an echo back in my headphones, so I hope I've been coherent in what I've delivered.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Diamond. If you can email the Secretariat the table documents that you wish to table, they can make that available to the committee.
Thank you.
I will go to questions. Senator Ruston.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So can I just ask you, do you support more training, noting obviously the workforce challenges that we've seen over recent times, and how that training can actually deliver better quality care? I mean, is that something that you see as a valuable contribution that the people that you represent would be able to provide for the people they care for?
Do I support more training, Senator? The answer is yes.
Yep. And do you see and so I'm interested to understand whether you see that as a value proposition in terms of delivery of better care?
It's a value proposition, and the value of the training is that it delivers quality care and quality care minutes, and quality care minutes that exceed the targets that have been set by government. This is what plenty of providers are not doing, and the idea that trading off between training and care minutes is a bad idea.
Okay, I disregard that part of previous evidence. I'm just interested in the training, in your commentary around. You made a comment. You just said, plenty of providers aren't providing quality care minutes. So it was an interesting comment. And you also said, and it's already hard enough to get providers to meet their care minutes. I'm sort of interested to understand what the research or foundational basis for that comment is, in terms of the way you couch it. It sort of sounds like a majority of providers are being dragged kicking and screaming for the delivery of care minutes, and I just wondered what the basis of that was, particularly given that the Prime Minister himself has made comments that providers are meeting 99% of their care minutes, meeting their care minutes 99% of the time. So just interested, your nomenclature is very negative against the employment place of the people you represent.
I am negative against the employers.
Okay.
And the employers are some big companies.
Okay.
And what I am, no, let me finish, please, Senator. What I am saying is that the feedback that we get from our members, and you'll see this in the document that I'm proposing to table, is that many of these employers are reporting that they're simply that many of these employees, I should say, are being told that they should, for example, work outside their shift times, that they should sort of be coping with multiple unfilled shifts, and they are not in a. They are seeing on the ground that a lot of what's being reported as care minutes are in fact the result of, for example, hybrid roles, blurring the distinction between non-direct care and direct care staff and direct care delivery. So we think there should be much more sort of, there are headline figures on what constitutes care time minutes and what constitutes reaching care time minutes. But we think that a lot of the information that's coming up via providers, and the system does trust providers to tell it the correct information, a lot of the information is potentially misleading.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm just wondering, have you raised this issue with the Minister in relation to the Prime Minister's comments that, you know, the sector is meeting their care minutes 99% of the time? You've just made an accusation that somehow that's not the case because misleading information is being provided. Have you raised this issue with the Minister?
Well, we're always looking to raise issues with the Minister. In fact, we've raised the issue publicly.
Okay, so I'm just seeking to understand.
Earlier this year, we raised the issue publicly. We issued a release. We published the reports of our Aged Care Watch Quality Snapshot. Once again, happy to table that. Whatever discussions are made with other people, we've raised the issue publicly. We've raised the issue publicly that we don't think that current quality standards are being adhered to, that the information that's going into star ratings is always the best quality information. That's why we're welcoming for example, attempts to make the compliance information work better. We're welcoming the implementations of reviews, but we're not. We want them to go further. We're not satisfied with the amount of information, and we want them to go further.
Okay, so just to be really clear, I was actually asking a very specific question. I just wanted to know whether you had raised this particular issue directly with the Minister earlier this year. Public, I accept that, but I said, have you raised this with Minister Ray? And I'm just keen to understand, yes or no. Have you raised this specific issue with Minister Ray?
Me personally?
Well, your organisation.
Well, we've had at least a couple of meetings with Minister Ray, and we've also taken our members there as well to talk about their experiences.
Okay, sorry, I just would be keen for you to answer my question. Have you raised this issue with Minister Ray? I don't mind if you haven't.
We've presented him with this data. We've presented him with this information that we've got.
Look, obviously he's not going to answer my question, so I'll cede.
I'm sorry, Senator Ruston. I am answering your question. You've asked me to. You seem to want me to answer the question in a particular way. This is what I've proposed to you that we've provided this information to the Minister, which I'm also prepared to provide to the committee as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Diamond. We are going to move to Senator Delija, who is online, that has a question for you.
Oh, thanks, Chair. And apologies, I had to drop out and have just come back in. I just wanted to start off to the UWU to acknowledge and to thank the work of UWU members to support people in aged care. I think it's a really, really invaluable work, and please pass on thank you to your members for the important work that they do. I just wanted to talk about and ask you about the government's wage increase for aged care workers and how they've been a help to aged care providers in retaining staff. How will these reforms, commencing on 1 November, further assist in attracting and retaining workers in aged care from your perspective?
Well, from our perspective, this has been a historically undervalued sector. And the workers in it have been undervalued from a, undervalued because they are predominantly female occupation in predominantly female industries. We do have a situation where people are have been historically not always. It hasn't been wages have not been an incentive if you purely considered them on those basis for joining the sector. And we firmly believe that, that the ability to stay in the sector is going to be considerably improved by measures to lift wages. And more people who stay in the sector, these are more skilled and experienced people, are going to make for a much better aged care sector into the future. So this is a process that we believe should continue and continue to improve.
And was there anything specific, any other sort of thing specific in relation to the Act or to the reforms that you see is going to assist to attracting and retaining workers in the sector?
Well, I think some of the points about, for example, the advantages of the opportunities, I should say, of perhaps a national worker registration scheme. There are various reasons why people want to implement a worker registration scheme, but what they're from our point of view, a particular way in which the value of these workers is raised through investment in training, investment in professional development, investment in, actually recognising some of the skills that they frankly already have. By virtue of being in the sector for a considerable period of time. And our view is that insofar as this act or the former act and the future changes to the aged care rules are going to develop those opportunities for workers, that can only be to the better.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Delija. Dr. Diamond, I'd like you to thank you for giving evidence to the committee today, and also want to echo the sentiments of Senator Delija to pass on to the iwi membership the important work that they do in our aged care sector. The committee will report to the Senate on Thursday the 21st of August 2025 and has agreed that any responses that have been taken as questions on notice should be provided at the close of business Thursday the 14th of August 2025 to the Secretariat. We will now move to our final session. I now welcome representatives from the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing, including representatives from the Aged Care Council of Elders and the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. Thank you all for appearing before the committee today. The Senate has resolved that an officer of a department of the Commonwealth or of a state shall not be asked to give opinions on matters of policy and shall be given reasonable opportunity to refer questions to the officer, to superior officers or to a minister. This resolution does not preclude questions asking for explanation of policies or factual questions about when and how policies were adopted. Commonwealth officers appearing today are also reminded of the Senate order specifying the process by which a claim of public interest immunity should be raised. A copy of the order is available from the Secretariat. I'd ask for this Hansard record, please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today. Might start from this end.
Liz Heffron-Webb, Aged Care Quality and Safety Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Naomi Levithis from the Department of Disability, Health and Aged Care.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Amy Laffin from the Department.
Sonia Stewart from the Department, Deputy Secretary.
And online, I believe we have Ms Burgess.
Good morning. Anne Burgess, Chair of Aged Care Council of Elders.
Excellent. Thank you. I would now invite you to make a short opening statement, and at the conclusion of your remarks, I will then invite members of the committee to ask questions. So can we try and contain it to 5 minutes, if that's possible?
I don't have an opening statement.
No opening statement, Department?
I have an opening statement and I'll keep it to that time. So I'm Sonia Stewart, the Deputy Secretary in the Ageing and Aged Care Group at the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing. As a Yuin woman, I would like to begin by acknowledging that we're on the lands of the Ngunnawal people and pay my deep respects to country. My thanks to the committee for the opportunity to appear before this inquiry into the Aged Care Accommodation Payment Security Levy Amendment Bill 2025 and the Aged Care and Other Legislation Amendment Bill 2025 that were introduced to Parliament on the 24th of July 2025. Together, these two amendment bills make adjustments to existing legislation in preparation for the commencement of the Aged Care Act on the 1st of November 2025, implementing the government's aged care reform agenda and delivering on the recommendations of the Royal Commission into the Aged Care Quality and Safety. The Aged Care and Other Legislation Amendment Bill, the Principal Amendment Bill, which we refer to as the ACOLA Bill, makes amendments to the Aged Care Act 2024, the Aged Care Consequential and Transitional Provisions Act of 2024, and consequential amendments to various related legislation to support the commencement and the implementation of those acts. This will support a seamless transition for existing users of the aged care system to the new risk-based regulatory model designed to encourage the delivery of high-quality funded aged care services and increase provider accountability established under the new Act. The ACOLA Bill makes a number of transitional changes to ensure that subsidies are paid correctly to support the provision of funded aged care to older people living in Australia. Further, unspent funds accrued on behalf of older persons will also remain available to them under the new system. The ACOLA Bill also includes updated automated provisions which reflect best practice for transparency, clarity and the protection of older people. This will also allow the system to remain efficient and keep pace with technological advances and ensure that older people in Australia receive faster and more robust decisions. In addition, the amendments provide for several new matters that will support the transition to the new Act. This includes authorisations for the proper use and disclosure of relevant protected and personal information when it transitions from the old framework into the new framework. A new time-limited rulemaking power is also being introduced. This adapted power enables the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors during the first 2 years of operation of the new Act to make rules modifying the operation of primary legislation. This will ensure continuity of care is maintained for older people in the event of any unforeseen or unintended consequences and circumstances during the transition and implementation of the new rights-based aged care system that's established by the new Act. It's important to note that this power is adapted and proportionate and may only be used where the Minister is satisfied that it is necessary or appropriate to do so, and only in relation to the Commonwealth aged care system. The rule should also be reviewed against the context of the supporting provision of funded aged care services. Further, the ACOLA Bill will make consequential changes to legislation that references the Commonwealth aged care system. This includes amendments ensuring that funded aged care services are provided in a manner consistent with other Commonwealth legislation. The Levy Amendment Bill is required so that, in line with the other consequential amendments, the full Commonwealth legislative system operates as it is intended to from the 1st of November 2025. The changes also make it so that the Levy Act applies to registered providers under the new Act rather than approved providers under the old Act of 1997. Another key piece of the reforms are the aged care rules. When the department appeared before this committee as part of the inquiry into the Aged Care Bill of 2024, there was a commitment to releasing the rules for public visibility. We've published 7 releases of the rules between September 2024 and May 2025. We received more than 400 submissions from aged care providers, advocates for older people and aged care workers and carers, healthcare experts, as well as older people themselves. The amendment bills accommodate feedback received from the department's separate consultations on the draft aged care rules conducted between September 2024 and May 2025. In response to the feedback on the rules, some of the changes to the new Act include removing the ability for the rules to prescribe caps for cleaning and for gardening services, removing the requirement for the higher everyday living fee agreements to be in writing, giving the rules flexibility to prescribe specific circumstances where a written agreement is required. The final draft of the rules was released on the 31st of July 2025. This will now give providers sufficient time to prepare and develop their processes and systems ahead of the new Act starting on the 1st of November 2025. Thank you for the opportunity to make this statement. This committee's feedback and the views that you ascertain through your hearings are important to us as we look ahead to the new Act's commencement.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Senator Ruston, you have the call.
Thank you very much. So I'm just keen to understand in relation to the details of the bill. Obviously, one of the really significant provisions that this bill deals with is the ability for information to be able to be used by the Department of Health and Department of Services Australia to enable the information for the service agreements. So I was just wondering, when did the department first become aware of the need to have legislation for this information sharing between the Department of Health and Services Australia?
So my understanding is that it was always intended that there would be amending legislation, and we had that in our schedule in terms of the major program, I think as early as January of this year.
Okay. So when you say it was always intended, why wasn't it included in the original bill?
So in the original bill, there was the ability for us to be having information that is then the subject of decisions that can be made in a more automated fashion. So there was a general provision in the bill. One of the things is working through in terms of the implementation is to give absolute transparency and clarity that every instance of every decision is now suggested in the amending legislation to be prescribed.
Okay.
Ms Laffin, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. So you knew at least on the 1st of January that your bill or the Act that had been passed in November was incomplete in relation to this piece of legislative enablement. I think that's what you just said to me, didn't you, that you knew in January?
Said as early as January that we had a plan for the legislation. So my understanding, and I acknowledge that Senator Rust and I began just right before Christmas, is that the legislation had the ability for this information to be shared, and it already happens in terms of information being shared and decisions getting made in this form. So it already had the requirement and the ability through the legislation to do that. And as we work through such a major reform, the advice was to get it as concrete as we can for transparency for older people and transparency and accountability, that every single decision would be legislated and drafted in that way.
Well, I would actually challenge what you've just said, because, I mean, obviously there are a number of different mechanisms by which changes can occur. We've heard, I mean, obviously all the rules that are in delegated instruments, and we've obviously had quite a discussion this morning about the Henry VIII provisions that you've included in this. So I'd suggest that we aren't seeking to legislate every piece. There is definitely a clear intention to use a number of different mechanisms by which to enable this Act and the provisions of it to be implemented. So I'm interested to understand, so in what you've just said to me, you basically said that there is no need to legislate this information sharing, but you're just doing so in the interest of transparency.
I didn't say that there's no need to do it. I think what we're trying to do, this is, as you would appreciate, a really big, complex system with very significant change. So when we're approaching this and looking at it, legislation with all the reforms, we're trying to be best practice and exemplar in terms of leaving no doubt in terms of the importance of this. And the advice was to ensure that the legislation and the opportunity to amend it made it really clear. So there was already an opportunity in the mechanism. This is about being best practice and leaving no doubt in terms of transparency, in terms of the nature of the decisions which will be made for this.
So can I just take that one step further? So what you're saying to me is that in as early as January, that you were aware that you were intending to do this. If you hadn't done it, would have the bill been able to be enacted and introduced or come into effect on the 1st of July without this particular provision that you're talking about now? And would the information sharing have been able to occur in the absence of this particular legislative amendment?
Yeah, Amy wants to answer that one.
So, Senator, yes, the Act would have been able to commence on the 1st of July, but I think it's the transition, the information and the transition of the information from the old Act to the new Act, that wouldn't have been able to occur. So it would have been that information starting with the new Act on the 1st of July. These amendments allow the information from the old Act to transfer for use under the new Act ahead of the new Act commencing on the 1st of November.
So I'm just trying to understand, if you were aware of this in January and we're now seeking to pass this bill hopefully in August to enable this to happen, what would have actually happened on the 1st of July in terms of the information that was necessary for the internal departmental systems to be able to provide the information to providers? I mean, quite clearly about something as important as the service agreements that they need to put in place with the new funding arrangements. I'm just keen to understand, was it always known that we were not able to move to actually do everything we needed to do, particularly about the provision of the new home care packages under support at home, without this legislation?
So we always knew that when you're moving one system, which is so important and impactful for so many people, from an old system into a new system, that there was going to be a period of transition.
Yes.
So, and we worked with the Transition Task Force and acknowledge Anne Burgess as the chair of that. So what it would have meant is that there would have been time that would need to be taken for decisions to be made, and you talked about the service agreements, which was a really important part of the feedback, for older people to be sitting down with providers, and particularly around those that will be needing to make a contribution for the first time, to understand that under the means testing provision. So it would have still been able to happen. It just would have meant that there would have been, what we're proposing now with this legislation coming through, is absolutely allowing time for older people ahead of that 1st of November start date to have the time to be having the conversations about their level of contribution. So it would have happened. It just would have happened in a more staged way.
And sorry, just to add to that, it would have happened, but it would have happened in a more manual process. So, for example, consumers would have had to provide information that was already held by the system, being the old system. They would have had to have provided that separately to Services Australia, whereas these provisions enable that to happen automatically.
So in January, you reasonably would have expected that 260,000 Australians were going to have to provide information manually to Services Australia. Well, that seems a bit unreasonable. Can I just then maybe move to where we are now? So we've got this bill. Hopefully we can get it through the Parliament. And I think certainly the intent of us all is to do that as quickly as possible. So when will Services Australia, assuming the bill goes through in the next parliamentary sitting, when will Services Australia be in a position to issue the contribution determinations as a result of this information sharing provision that we're talking about? I mean, what after this bill goes through and it's assented to, what then needs to happen in terms of Services Australia build and the provision of that information? Because, Ms Stewart, you made the comment that you wanted older Australians to have the opportunity to be able to discuss this. I'm sort of thinking we've got a pretty short period of time here. So what is your work program in order for for providers to have these contribution determinations in order for them to put the service agreements in place and talk to older Australians about them?
Senator Josh Maldon here from the department. So, as you've pointed out, we have a legislative dependency. So, assuming the legislation passes, there is then a dependency on a bill from Services Australia, which is tracking it's tracking to plan as we speak. Noting those questions would be best directed to Services Australia. I am advised this morning that they're 95% through their build.
Well, first of all, Services Australia aren't here because we were denied them attending. But I'm interested to understand, you say they're 95% through their build. What additional information does Services Australia require as a result of this bill in order for them to finalise their build?
So this bill enables the transfer of data, so all the information that's required from the department systems across to their systems through a data migration, of which we're currently through, I think it's dry run 2.
Okay. So once they've got the data that they are able to get access to, because Services Australia will have a formal permission to be able to provide that in an automated way to Services Australia, what is the build time from then to when those determinations will be provided to providers?
So the plan is that they'll start communicating from the 1st of October.
So those, when you say start to communicate, what does that actually mean?
So that means they'll have the information, they'll be able to have conversations with people should they call up. There will be information available in a portal to providers should providers choose to access that information with the portal, which they do currently as part of standard practice.
So the contribution determinations for all people will be available, subject obviously to the passage of this bill in the appropriate time, is possible to be available by the 1st of October. So all providers will have access to contribution determinations on the 1st of October. Is that what we're saying?
Susan Traynor from the department. What will be available from the 1st of October is an interim determination. A formal determination of a person's contribution will be made on the 1st of November based on their income and assets at that time. There will be a group of about, we estimate, 7,000 participants who are not eligible for the No Worse Off principle and not in receipt of an income support payment, such as the age pension, who will need to provide assets information to Services Australia. So that's particularly Commonwealth Seniors Health Card holders for whom Services Australia doesn't currently hold enough information. They will need to provide asset information before those determinations can be made.
Okay. So the difference between the interim determination and the final determination, that month period. So what is the opportunity for change in that period? I mean, what would change?
So what would change is only if something about the person's circumstances were to change. Noting that for all pensioners, the system build is based on the ability for Services Australia to reach across to the social security system and use pension income and assets. It would generally only be if there is a change in those income and assets that the final result would differ from that interim result.
Yep. So just to be really clear, you have a level of confidence that you are guaranteeing that both the Department of Health and Aged Care's ICT systems and Services Australia's ICT systems will be tested and running in time for the 1st of October.
That's correct. Yep, we have a plan that we are implementing. I mean, these are very, very big system changes.
Yeah, I get that.
On any day, there's issues that arise, there's issues that solve. We've got an escalation point. That is the plan.
Okay. Do you have a contingency plan built in if, for whatever reason? I mean, we've all been around here long enough to know that when ICT goes wrong, it goes wrong. So have you got any plan? Is there any, soft systems and trials, etc.? Because I do understand you've got a very short time frame. So is there a provision within your rollout for what happens if there is a problem?
Yeah, so do you want to speak about that?
So I'm happy to answer that. So Josh again, Malden. So absolutely, party contingency planning is a natural part of an exercise of this scale. And so what we do is we plan those contingencies and we build it into the actual schedule. Because we're doing that, we've built in robust testing and independent assurance over the top of those things. And as the Deputy Secretary just said, we are tracking to the plan on the critical path for delivery by implementation.
Okay. So just back to the 1st of October when this determination, contribution determination information will be available. So you're saying it'll be available in services, access through Services Australia, I'm assuming through My Aged Care or MyGov, how will the people who are going to be impacted by this actually get that information? Will it be through their provider? If their provider goes onto the website, will the government, through whichever agency, provide that information directly to the person saying, as of the 1st of November, this is what your contributions will be? I mean, how will this be communicated to Australians?
So do you want to go?
Thanks, Senator Ruston. Greg Pugh, First Assistant Secretary of the Access and Home Support Division. So what we've got is effectively a timeline that sets out where we are now all the way through to the end of December. And so I can walk through that, but if we're getting into a level of painstaking detail, please.
No. I just was interested to understand. You've just sort of committed with great confidence that contribution determinations will be available on the 1st of October. I was just seeking to understand how they will be communicated to the people that are impacted by those determinations. Because am I correct in my understanding that every single person who has a home care package at the moment who will go into support at home on the 1st of November will be required to sign a new service agreement regardless of whether they're grandfathered or not, or will it only be those that aren't grandfathered?
Service agreements will apply to everyone.
Okay, so we've got 250,000+ service agreements that have to occur. How many of those service agreements will be implicated by the contribution determinations that will be available on the 1st of October?
So I think the number that we're tracking as being subject to service agreements is around 307,000 people, a bit more than the 250.
Yep.
Of that, we expect that contribution information will be available for all but the 7,000 people that Ms Traynor mentioned, who we don't hold certain information for.
Yep.
And so each of those people will have to have a service agreement in place by that time.
So about 300,000 contribution determinations will need to be available on the website. So how will those determinations be communicated to the person who is ultimately going to be paying for them?
Cool. So for the first 2 weeks of October, those determinations will be processed by Services Australia, and participants can literally ring up Services Australia.
Sorry, will be processed. Can you explain to me what the first 2 weeks of October they'll be processed? So they'll have been determined on the 1st of October, so that means they'll be known. So then what does that 2 weeks do?
So for the 2 weeks, that information progressively becomes available. People can ring up Services Australia and ask for what their contribution outcome has been.
300,000 of them.
300,000 people can ring up.
So what is the provision?
Providers,
That's right.
or the other, the other option is that those that are interacting with providers, the provider can go onto the portal, which they do now, and get the specifics for that older person.
So what kind of numbers of calls are you expecting during that time, and what provisions have been made for that?
So
we've worked with.
Or is that a Services Australia question?
It is a Services Australia question.
But we worked with them, and this is what we've planned for. Yeah.
That's right. So they've got the ability to scale up massively and scale down as they need to. So they're more than confident that they can deliver this within the required timeframe.
Okay. Yeah. So there's no sort of automatic provision for 300,000 people to be notified by whatever means to say to them, as of the 1st of November. Well, first of all, you will need to sign a new service agreement. And in signing that new service agreement, this is what your contributions will be as of the 1st of November. There has to be a proactive action on behalf of either the provider or the person to find that information out. There is no intention for the Department of Health and Aged Care or Services Australia to, or Department of Social Services to notify?
So, Senator, I might jump in there and just paint to the broader communications approach that we've had on this particular issue. So we've been quite proactive in this space. So we've published a range of materials so people can understand their individual contribution and the impact that it's going to have on them through case studies, videos. We've done it through fact sheets. In May, the department wrote to all current home care package recipients to let them know about the new programs and advise to them the timeframe in which Services Australia will be writing to confirm their actual individual impacts. We've also published
So can I just take back, so they're going to write to everyone and tell them what the individual impact of this
That is part of the process that will
Okay.
end up happening, yes.
Yeah, when will that happen?
So that'll start to happen. Following November will be when the official correspondence goes out, when it is known. Between then and now, we've got a number of different mechanisms to make it known for people what the impact will be. So, for example, we've published the calculator where people can get on and to determine their income and asset information. Again, there's fact sheets that are available. We've promoted a video. There's also a public webinar and Q&A, which is scheduled for the 14th of August. And again, there'll be dedicated support from Services Australia to be able to go through those results from the 1st of October. And again, aged care providers will have access to that information and they will be definitely able to communicate with people those results as part of negotiating service agreements.
Yeah. Okay, so information's available on the 1st of October. There'll be a 2-week period where that information is processed. People will either be able to go onto the portal or ring up Services Australia to find out how it impacts them individually or through their provider. But the actual information will not be provided without the requirement of action on behalf of the provider or the individual until after the 1st of November. Is that correct? So you've just said, Mr Malden, that Services Australia will be required to communicate with everybody as to what their contributions are, but that communication won't occur until after the expectation for these service agreements to be in place. So I mean, trying to understand whose responsibility is it to actually find this information out. So service providers have obviously got to put the new service agreements in place with these 300,000 people. So whose responsibility is it to find the information?
Yeah, and thank you for summarising, and I acknowledge that we could have been more succinct in answering your question, so I apologise. It's absolutely the department's responsibility to ensure that we communicate effectively and well with everybody, because this is a very, very big change. And for some people, it will be the first time that they're making a contribution. So we absolutely acknowledge that. That is our responsibility to ensure that. It's our responsibility to work with Services Australia to ensure that they've got the systems and processes. What we thought about very deeply is, and we listened to a range of different feedback. One of the things is about sending out letters ourselves as a department, which we have already done, or Services Australia. One of the bits of feedback on that is that can cause confusion if we're doing one letter and then another letter in a couple of weeks' time. So we've thought things through, and we've also, discussed this with others about and listened to feedback along the way. So there'll be. So we have communicated. We think. Effectively acknowledging that there's more webinars and more information that we can do, and we do have some time in the lead up to the 1st of October. So there's 4 main ways. One of them is the information that we're providing now about getting ready, working with OPAN and COTA and others, like different mechanisms such as through libraries and other ways to make sure that information flows very effectively to older people where they are. And getting people ready for those conversations. The other one, which already happens right now, is that providers can go into the portal and get that information.
Providers can go into the portal?
Yep. And
can an individual go into the portal?
No, this is a particular portal for the providers, which they currently do. And then the other one is that if people want to call themselves, and so they don't want to go through that provider, or they're not planned to have a conversation with their provider, they can call, and then only the final thing that beg your pardon?
Only call. They can't. There's no way that they can go online and.
They can go online, and that's the estimator that Mr. Malden was talking about, which is available right now, where they can go on and.
But they can't go and get their own information. They can only put their own data in, which obviously is still subject to the interpretation of of the calculation of the department itself.
Yeah, that's Services Australia.
They
and we've
wouldn't
taken feedback about making that estimator pretty clear in terms of what you're putting in and what you're getting out. And then when the Act commences and the new system, they will get a formal determination from Services Australia about the level of their contribution. So we have an absolute responsibility in that, and still open to feedback about is there something else that we can be doing, noting that other feedback around not being too confusing in terms of different forms. Some people don't prefer SMS or email, and different considerations. So that's the broad approach, and apologies again that we could have been more succinct in describing that.
Can I just, I just need to share the call to government senators who just have a couple of questions, and I will have time to come back to you, Senator Ruston. I'll hand the call to Senator Delija.
Just for the department, can you tell us how the bills help deliver on the policy intent that was expressed by the Parliament during the passage of the Aged Care Act 2024?
Sure. So these amendment bills don't change the policy as implemented by those by the new Aged Care Act 2024. Simply make some technical and consequential changes to build on all of that policy that was already determined and consulted on as part of a lengthy process and as a result of the Aged Care Royal Commission.
Great. In your submission on page 3, you state that the amendments made by the ACOLA bill support the seamless transition for individuals accessing aged care services from the system established under the 97 Act to the new regulatory model. Can you explain how the bills deliver on that promise of a seamless transition?
So one example, Senator, is that information flow between the old system and the new system, so that Services Australia and others are able to use that data and that information collected rather than that they already have in the system, rather than seeking that from a consumer again, and that older person needing to provide exactly the same information a second time. Essentially allows for the reuse of that information. So that's an example of how that transition is made more seamless through these amendment bills.
Excellent. And another, it's spoken about quite a bit during the hearings today. There's been concerns raised about the use of the rule-making powers like the Henry VIII provisions. Can you explain in what context you'd expect these powers to be activated? And I assume that there's the intention that they're used to be limited to delivering on the policy intent of the Act.
Thanks, Senator. So the intention of the rulemaking power is really to serve as a fail-safe, ensuring that the Minister can act swiftly to address any unforeseen or unintended circumstances that could potentially sort of arise out of implementing the Act and reform of this size. Also, some of the examples contemplated are actually in the provision as well, such as another matter that's been raised a couple of times around automation of administrative decisions or actions. And so that's an example where we may want to clarify further if there's another action that might require automation at a later date.
And could you detail some of the guardrails that exist in governing the use of these rule-making powers?
Yes, of course. So one key guardrail is that this, like any rulemaking power, any rules made under this power would be subject to parliamentary scrutiny through
the usual disallowance.
Thanks.
Yeah. Usual disallowance provisions.
Yes,
there's also some time limiting factors. So the 24 months in which any of those Henry VIII, you can only use the Henry VIII clause for 24 months, and also any rules passed using that power can only exist for 24 months. So they would sunset and would need to be made through an amendment passage. So that's...
Yes, that's right. Thanks.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Delija. Senator Anandaraja.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the department and to Ms Burgess and your panel, your task force, for all this work that you've done. It's truly mammoth, just listening to the department speak about this and unpack it all for us. So we're very grateful. I guess my question really relates to this issue of automated decision making. It's somewhat triggering to the Australian people off the back of robo-debt, etc. But can you confirm that this already occurs in the Act, and what does it actually mean? And the amendments being proposed now, I understand, will enhance transparency around this. If you could elaborate, that would be great.
Yeah, so the first point would be just to echo what Ms Stewart said to begin with, and that is that previously these powers existed. In fact, these things are already happening under the current Aged Care Act, but there was one single provision related to the automated decision-making in the current Act, in the 2024 Act. And what this bill does is it separates each circumstance where automatic decision-making will be used, and it gives an example and gives the requirements for that. So rather than a one provision cover-all, it's really clear to the reader and to consumers each of those instances in which automated decision-making is being used. And it does things like, captures information that's already in the system. So again, that sort of example that I gave previously about it enables information that's already held to be used for this purpose under the Aged Care Act. It also does things like, calculates the number of days per number of dollars. So in a sense, it kind of provides those, it works as a calculator. That's also part of the automated decision making. And I think what is a little bit difficult is that we say automated decision making because there are these components of automated decision making, but actually the final approval for payments for example, for the residential care subsidy and for supplements, there is a person involved and engaged at the review step, so it's not completely without human intervention.
Understood, thank you. I also would like just to better understand what kind of engagement you've had with stakeholders over this piece of work, and particularly with regards to your briefings to the Aged Care Transition Task Force. And after you've spoken, I'd like to hear from Ms Burgess as well, please.
Yeah, no, thank you for your question. This is significant reform, and there's a number of different mechanisms that are formal that we receive our feedback from. One of them is the Transition Task Force, and that has around 20 members on that represent older people, that represent providers, that represent unions, as well as those who think deeply in this in terms of an academic perspective. We also have an advisory council, and we also have a wonderful group called the Council of Elders that we engage with, as well as with the rules that was open for consultations, and there was hundreds of people over weeks that provided their feedback on that. They're the main mechanisms. I think also one of the key things we have is a state and territory network, which I'm very proud of in terms of leading that group, and they gather information that's very, very local. But I also acknowledge that the chair of the task force is here in terms of Anne Burgess, and as she said, she will have a perspective to share as well.
And can you share with us your perspective on the level of engagement and the process?
Thank you, Senator. I'm happy to do that. So I chair the Aged Care Council of Elders, as you've heard, and I also chair the task force. Council of Elders have been involved in every aspect of this reform, as was expected by the Royal Commission that asked for the Council of Elders to be set up as an independent body of older people. And we've been deeply involved in every aspect of the reform, including all the consultations. The task force is being brought into place to implement the new Act. And as people have said this morning, we have every sector involved in that task force. I've been particularly impressed that when we have all those sectors around the table, like unions and providers and workers and older people and peak bodies, that everybody has worked with a single aim of getting the Act into place in the best possible way, as quickly as possible, and to problem solve all the inevitable aspects of such a large reform process, and really worked hard to problem solve as we've gone along and worked together on that. So I think it's been a very collaborative process. Not to say that the implementation will be perfect, it probably won't, because when you've got 1,000 moving parts, there's bound to be something that falls over. But I think everybody's determined to try and put it in place in the best possible way. And we know that we need a new Act. It's really important to older people, and we need it as soon as we can. So I think that's been a good process.
Thank you, Ms Burgess. And just back to the department, can you please elaborate on how the bills deliver on the no worse off principle and explain, particularly to any Australians watching, what that actually means?
Happy to explain the no worse off principle. So the no worse off principle is a term we use to describe essentially the grandparenting arrangements for financial contributions through the transition from home care packages to support at home and the transition arrangements for current residents of residential aged care. So for home care package recipients, the no worse off principle is based around whether they were approved for package or in a home care package on or before the 12th of September 2024, which is the date the reforms were announced. A person who was first approved for a package on or before that date will move to transitional contribution rates. They won't remain on the current income tested care fee. They will move to a contribution as a percentage of the cost of services received that ensures their contributions are the same or lower than they were before the commencement of the reforms. Importantly, for full pensioners eligible for the no worse off principle, that means they will continue to pay no contribution towards their in-home aged care costs. For residential aged care, it's as simple, was the person in permanent residential aged care on or before the date of commencement of the Act? Sorry, I should say not on the date of commencement, the day before the date of commencement of the Act. So a person in permanent residential aged care on the 31st of October 2025 will remain under the current means-tested fee arrangements and not be liable for things like RAD retention when the reforms commence.
Thank you. And I'm just curious, do you think that this is one of the biggest transformational changes that the department has had to undertake in living memory, or are there others? I'm struggling to think of any others, but anyway.
As somebody sitting in the hot seat of the senior responsible officer, it feels that way. From and as I acknowledged before, I was in the Commonwealth, I've come back. I think for me, this is a unique system in that the Commonwealth has so many levers in this system. So in terms of regulation, acknowledge Liz Heffron-Webb here, and legislation in terms of funding and policy. So quite often the Commonwealth might have one or two. This is all three. And so from my perspective, I think it is, for me, I don't describe it as root and branch. I think it's soil and atmosphere, and it's fundamental. It relies a lot on ICT delivery, and it relies on collecting information once and using it many times. And I think the other thing I would say, Senator, on my reflection, and something that I'm trying to lead in the department, is that it puts older people at the heart of everything we do. And in particular, you know, we're requiring providers to do that quite rightly through our funding agreements and other arrangements. But what do we as a department, what does that mean for us? So older person centricity, rights, dignity, and ensuring that we never go back to a time around the Royal Commission. So I think with all of that said, it is a very significant change. And I need to say there's a lot of people with a vested interest in it. You know, not only do we think about this deeply and professionally, but there's, you know, everyone we interact with has a story and has family and kin that are involved or thinking about this. So, yeah, we think it's very, very significant and very important. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. I'm going to thank you, Senator Anandaraja. I'm just going to go back to the coalition for some follow-up questions.
Okay, yeah, look, you're probably going to cop a whole heap of questions on notice because we clearly haven't had enough time to prosecute what are some pretty substantial issues here. So can I just ask, does the department have a release schedule for the supported home packages, the 83,000 that were supposed to have started to be released from the 1st of July that now obviously have been delayed? Do you have a release schedule for when they will be in the marketplace in 25, 26?
So just with, can I just check with the packages, because I probably don't have the right person here because we were thinking it was more around the legislation. I mean, I can...
Yeah, just earlier today we heard providers say that they had the workforce in place to support a surge. They were ready to go and many of them had put that in place for the 1st of July. The delay from the 1st of July till November has had some detrimental impact on them. So I was just thinking, in order to make sure that going forward that we have the plan in place, I'm more than happy for you to come back to me with an answer to that, but I'd just be really keen to understand if you have that schedule for the release of packages, when that information will be made available to the sector so that they've got time to gear up, so that they are in a position to have the workforce in place to be able to provide the services when they come online. So if you don't have the answer...
Yeah, we can come back to you on
Yeah,
that.
cool. Okay, thank you. Just keen to understand, does the department have any idea what the rationale behind the delay of the home care packages that were promised in the election campaign? I understand from the discussion why we've had the delay in relation to the implementation of the new Act, but why were the home care packages delayed as well?
Yes, of course.
Was there a rationale?
I'm just cognisant, Senator Ruston, of that question is also pertaining to a references inquiry that is happening in probably less than 2 weeks. So I'll give the department the opportunity, but there is a whole inquiry that we are holding on this particular matter, so I just want to make sure that there is ample opportunity for us to do that and not do the spoiler alert where we go into the detail here, and that we want to keep this fenced into these bills and what they pertain to ensure that we wrap up this committee as quickly as possible.
Okay, so can I just check, Madam Chair? I'll just have a quick... So in terms of the answer to your question, the packages were connected to the new Act and the new legislation rather than a program which is, coming to an end in terms of the old program.
And I think ideologically, was there a technical connection?
Well, I think the thing for me is that we're moving into a new program which puts older people at the heart of everything that we do.
The greatest amount of respect. Was there a technical connection between the Act and the release of the packages?
No.
Okay. So when was the last time a new aged care package was released into the market?
Well, aged care packages are getting released.
No. A new aged care package, not a package that has been re-released. So when was a new package? The last time...
As I said before, I don't have the people with the package because we were talking about a legislation.
That's right. And I was very clear that this pertains to... These are not the correct departmental staff that can give you the detail.
Well, because
on notice,
you know what I'm going to be asking you when you come...
When we come back for references, I'm sure Senator Orman-Payne would love for you to ask that question in the References Committee. So I will be Deputy Chair at that point.
Sure. So. Can I just quickly ask you then, in relation to the Henry VIII powers that are sought here, who is the one who decides? Because I noticed in your introduction, Ms Stewart, you made the comment about that they were would be adapted and proportionate. So who makes the decision about whether they have been... Well, first of all, what is the adaptation of the Henry VIII rulemaking provisions that you are seeking to have for 24 months? What is the adaptation?
Yeah, sure. I will commence your answer and then I'll defer to those that have done more with their law degrees than me. So I think for me, in answering your question, it's about the use of the Henry VIII power for implementation, transition, adaptation reasons, rather than changing the legislative intent of the policy.
Okay, so the adaptation is not an adaptation of the Henry VIII power, it's using the Henry VIII power to enable flexibility and adaptation as the Act is being implemented. It's just that wasn't sort of clear in your opening statement. It made it sound like you were actually adapting the power as opposed to using the power for adaptation. Okay, that's fine. So who decides? You also referred to that any use of this power would have to be proportionate. Who makes the decision as to whether it's proportionate or when the rule can be used?
Yeah, so ultimately that would be for the Minister who makes that decision, noting that it's a disallowable instrument and up to scrutiny, but it would be the Minister.
So what is disallowable?
So that would form
the rules
the whole,
as part of the usual disallowance process.
Okay, so in terms of this power, the Henry VIII power, it gives the power to the Minister. So the Minister, even when he exercises that power, that particular decision of his is still subject to disallowance?
The rule that is made using that power, yes, is subject to disallowance.
So if the rule is already in place and the disallowance a period has expired and so the rule is in place, can the Minister still make a change to that rule without it going back for further disallowance?
Any new rule that's made can be disallowed.
No, I get the new rule can be disallowed, but what if the Minister chooses to make an amendment to a rule? Not a new rule, it's an amendment. You introduce a rule and then the rule doesn't meet expectation, whatever the reason. Can the Minister change the rule?
That would need to be made by that amendment would need to be made by a legislative instrument, and that legislative instrument would be disallowable.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that there will be the same level of transparency, oversight, and ability to disallow on a change made using these powers in the same way as it would be if you just introduced a new instrument through the rules.
Exactly right.
Okay, so what is the purpose of these rules then? Why don't you just do it by the normal mechanism? What is the advantage of this as opposed to the normal mechanism?
So usually rules are made by utilising a specific rule-making power in a provision of the legislation. This is saying, rather than saying you have a rule-making power for section XYZ, this is saying you have a broad rule-making power for the entirety of the Act.
Yeah. Okay, so the Minister has got the power to make the decision, but ultimately it's still the same level of transparency and process as a rule made by other by
the usual mechanisms. Correct.
Okay. All right, that's great. So is there a framework that sits around what those rules are like, what sits within that ministerial discretion for those 24 months? Is there a framework that says that the rules can, do they relate? Well, so for instance, could the Minister make a decision that they were going to increase the percentage of the refundable accommodation deposit that an individual has to pay in residential accommodation, which is currently, I think, intended to be 2% per year for up to 5 years, so a maximum of 10%. Could the Minister decide to change that and make that 3% or 5% by this Henry VIII power?
I mean, that's not something we've sought advice on because it's not the intended purpose. The intended purpose is for us to, do things along the line, is to use as a fail-safe along the lines of policy that's already been agreed. Technically, perhaps yes, but that's certainly not been our intention or our intentions in the discussions with government.
Okay. Well, I'd just be keen to understand what sort of framework is around that in order for the Minister not to, potentially use this to be making a decision that would otherwise sit within you would reasonably expect to sit within a more robust framework, even legislative amendment. But if I could have some more information on that, that would be great. And the other one I just wanted to ask you, Ms. Heffron-Webb, what actions will you, as the regulator, take where full compliance hasn't been achieved by the 1st of November? What is your intention in relation to that?
So we will be undertaking our usual risk-based approach, Senator. So as you know, we do regular audits and assessments of providers. We also collect information via complaints through serious incidents and other forms of advice that comes to us. Obviously, on the 1st of November, we won't have people in every facility and in every location, so we will be responding, as we do now, to areas where we think there's significant risk of harm, and as well as undertaking our usual regular standard compliance processes. So, there's a responsibility on providers to have full compliance from 1st of November. We will be following up reports that come to us that indicate there's a serious issue, significant issue, but our follow-up will depend on the risk of harm we perceive that the non-compliance relates to. So if it's a technical non-compliance, it's a small matter, obviously we would triage those sorts of matters.
Are you seeing an increase in the number of interactions that you're getting from consumers, or increased number of complaints, or just lack of understanding coming to you, Risa, or is it still pretty steady?
It's reasonably steady. We've had a little bit of an increase in complaint numbers. I think in the last 2 months they've been over 1,000 a month, whereas usually we're around 800, 900. But my advice is they're really mostly still related to the people's current experience under the current system, as opposed to concern about the future system. So, a small increase.
And are you finding that you're still in a position to be able to respond to the complaints within the timeframes that you've set yourself, or are you finding that they're stretching out a bit because you're getting more complaints? And I suppose the other question, and I know the Chair's giving me the evil eye, that obviously when the new system comes in place, you're going to probably be going to bear the brunt of anything that potentially goes wrong, or lack of information understanding, which is probably going to be inevitable. Do you have the resources in order for you to respond with what's likely to be an increased workload from the 1st of November or even the 1st of October to still meet your deadlines of being able to respond to complaints within the timeframes you've set yourself?
So I'm pleased to say that we did achieve our KPI of responding to 80% of complaints within 60 days in January. We're very close to it, but we haven't achieved it in the months since. Obviously, our goal is to achieve that. Yes, we will have surge workforce available should we get an increase in phone calls and complaints around the commencement of the new Act. So we're planning for that eventuality, not that we are sure that that will happen, but just to be ready. And often people ring us and we refer them over to my aged care because, it depends what the matter is that needs resolving. But yes, we'll be prepared.
Yeah, and not now, but I'd be really interested to understand if there's any thematics in terms of the kinds of complaints that you're getting, and particularly as we go through the transition to implementation, if you're seeing anything in particular. So maybe that's on notice for estimates.
Got it.
Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Ruston. Thank you, departmental staff, for your evidence today, and those joining us online, Ms Burgess. The committee will report to the Senate on the 21st of August and has agreed to the responses to questions on notice be provided by close of business of the 14th of August to the Secretariat. That concludes today's hearing. Thank you to all the witnesses who have appeared and to Hansard and Broadcasting for their assistance. The committee, as I said, will report to the Senate on the 21st of August 2025 and has agreed to the responses to the questions on notice be provided by the close of business on the 14th of August to the Secretariat. The committee stands adjourned. Thank you.